Welcome to the Visual Cast, coming at you from California. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Rem. The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we sit down with some of the best, most interesting, and most exciting visual artists from all over the world. We chat about life, art, visuals, software, hardware, systems, crystals, alien downloads, spirituality, and catalysts. It's essentially a massive nerd out. But the guests also do a set where we dive into their computer and get an up-and-close look at how they make art, how they perform art, or really anything they want to share with us. For episode 23, we have a super exciting and honoring guest, Theron Pray, the founder of Synesthesia and a master visual artist. For those not familiar, Synesthesia is an ultra-powerful VJ software, bringing the power of shaders and GLSL into the hands of everyone, regardless of technical skills, with tools, workflows, and features for VJs that are second to none. In my convo with Theron, we get into what it's like creating tools that close the gap between technical and visual artists, growing up in LA and being fascinated by how the universe works, ultimately leading him to study physics in Carlton College, playing music in an experimental tech band, and creating custom softwares out of a need to connect musicians to visuals, eventually turning it into synesthesia and what it means to open and run a company. We dive down the deep rabbit hole of what VJing is, meeting and mixing with Datagrama and being infatuated with creating audiovisual moments. Theron then gives us his introduction to GLSL, and we go deep into augmented reality and his company, AlphaChannel. For Theron's set, we take an up-and-close look at Synesthesia and some of its amazing features. We then check out Theron's unbelievable content from Boom Festival and his killer workflow for projection mapping inside of Synesthesia. I really love Theron. Besides for being a super smart and talented person, he's super inspiring to chat with, and we in the visual world are super lucky to have a unique and powerful force such as him. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anybody you think will enjoy this showcase and conversation. Without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Let's jump into it. Welcome to the podcast, Theron. Oh, wrong one.
Thank you.
Podcast, Theron.
Thank you. Super happy to be here. It's it was really nice to meet you out in the whatever desert woods lake of Boom, and it's been great to get to know you since, and
you
what
too,
you're doing
friend.
here with the Visual Cast is just awesome. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
These have been super fun to go through, just like seeing all the names, seeing a little bit behind some of the people in this scene.
Hell yeah. Well, let's get behind your scene. Let's jump into it. So, Theron Pray. Ever since meeting you in the flesh at Boom 2022, I understood why synesthesia is the way it is. You have this immensely powerful and beautiful energy of sharing and passing on knowledge that not many have. You have performed visuals at some of the biggest stages across the globe using a software that you invented, and by doing so have ushered in a new age, a new generation of VJs, and given access to extremely complicated generative and real-time capabilities to virtually anyone. You're an absolute pioneer in the visual arts world, and Synesthesia is truly blowing up right now, and you're just a real true gem of a human being. So to start off, what is it like having created not just a plugin or suite of tools, but an actual software for artists to use to blow people's brains right off their necks?
it has been really just incredible to see it grow. Um, we had like huge hopes for it, as most people do when when they're starting out on something. But um, yeah, but it's just totally different to see it when you first see it like actually being used in the field, by someone that you didn't know personally, and we're like, hey, use my thing, it's really cool, I promise. Um, and like, yeah, like it's really cool to see people, to make a tool for creatives, right? Because you're kind of um you're kind of like, as an artist, you can introduce art to the world, right? And then, making a tool for other people to make art, it's sort of like exponentiating your
Yeah.
creative output in some sort of sense, which for me is really cool, because I've always I am an artist, and I have certain vision that I want to get out, but also I really like the technical side. I really like building things, and mostly I really also like working with other artists to like, because I think a lot of other artists have like even more of that, their personal vision that they want to get out, and like I really like enabling that. So that's something really cool that Synthesia's done.
Beautiful. Yeah, it seems like whenever I talk to developers or people that are making tools for other people, like you said, the exponentialness of it, of kind of like putting something out there, having people use it, getting that feedback, and then just creating this amazing loop, is super rewarding. And it's really nice to hear that's the goal from people, and not like, oh yeah, I'm rich, or some shit like that. I think that's like not, I don't think that many people creating softwares in general are doing it for that feedback loop. There's usually an element of like a startup, a SaaS product, or something to kind of like, how can we make money? And to hear from so many developers in our space that it's not necessarily about that. Obviously, money's important, we need it, but it's not the driving force of it. The driving force of it is that feedback to make a tool for other people, is really beautiful. So, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the it's always the situation, like for people, where art and commerce meets, that's just like, there's this royal that just is constantly churning there, and is like, everyone has to find their own way through it, I think
100%.
every individual, and as soon as you're trying to make a business or career out of something artistic, there's a lot of just strange mental things you kind of have to face. You gotta plug into the matrix to to do anything, really. Just the way we live in society we live in, and it's like, I always think that it's like really just the intention, right? Like if the intention is money, that's what it's gonna be. If the intention is to do this art thing, then the money will come, and it's okay, and it's good actually if the money comes a lot. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's not, it's like being a successful artist and being rich from your art is not a bad thing, right? That's kind of the goal in some way, right? It's to self-support yourself in some way. I think that sometimes people kind of... It's a career, yeah. Sometimes people kind of conflate or create a conflict within that. Whether it's like the starving artist idea, or, this kind of being negative towards like, some sort of economic output or economic outcome. And, there's nothing wrong with being a capitalist if you're ethical, if the opposite. The Sistine Chapel ceiling was a commission, right?
I love that. That's so good.
So,
that's so good. That's great.
Most of the artists through history, we know about them because they were successful,
Yeah.
And most of the great art was not all of it. Right, there's always the starving artist is definitely a real thing, and there's
Van Gogh, right?
Yeah, there's people kind of ahead of their time,
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, it's
endless there. Go ahead.
So yeah, I also at the end I want to get into a little bit more of that, like what it means to have a business. But for now, I want to go to little Theron, kind of like growing up in LA, what that was like for you. I know that you studied physics at Carlton College. I don't know, is Carlton College in California? I don't really know where it is.
Carlton College is in Northfield, Minnesota.
Minnesota,
which is, yeah, that name Northfield is a pretty accurate descriptor of the place. It's in a field way up in the north. It's cold as hell.
What was it? What was that like, going from sunny LA to this kind of more colder region and studying physics? Was this something that you were always kind of interested in? What was like your, what was your childhood like? Were you full on nerdy boy, geeky boy,
Yeah, no, definitely. I was, always been nerdy, been into science and math, as a kid. I liked those. And going into high school, I also, my parents kind of got me playing piano. They were like, no, do piano lessons. You'll nice. Appreciate it. It'll be good to learn music. You'll have it for the rest of your life. And yeah, that's true. It's been like, music's always been a really big part of my life. And, in high school, I did both of those things. I was actually a part of like a really good jazz band. My, LA Public High School happened to have a really good band teacher. And like, he kind of taught me so much of the fundamentals of music, and that combined with, on the jazz side and like, about improvisation and rhythm and then for piano lessons, I had kind of the classical approach, and then there was another teacher in high school. Our band teacher was Mr. Samuel, by the way. Shout outs. And there's another teacher, Mr. Lord, who was this awesome AP bio teacher who just like, he kind of, that was like, I always knew I liked science, but like having that class and like I never thought I liked biology. I thought like biology, that's like kind of a fake or messy science or something. Like physics, that's the like real.
The real stuff.
Yeah, that's the real stuff. You're really looking into the fabric of the universe. Like that's what I wanted to be doing, that most just to the extreme, like the purity there, and, but yeah, like fell in love with biology and I was like, oh man, yeah, science. I mean, that just made me more confident that like, I really want to get into science. And so then, yeah, when it came time to apply to colleges, there was this one, in Minnesota that was like a liberal arts college. It was actually smaller than my high school.
Wow.
It's like 2,000 instead of 3,000, and it had really good science. And I thought I wanted liberal arts. That's what my parents did as well, liberal arts college, and so that was kind of this gem, of a school where it was liberal arts, but it had really good science, and it also had a good music program, and it was, I also wanted something different, I wanted to like break out of my comfort zone that I had in LA and just like challenge myself by doing something new and being in this new zone and like seeing what happens. And then I visited the place, really liked it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I was originally going to do a double major. I was going to do music and physics. And it turns out physics was hard. That was one part of why I didn't do the double major with music. But the second reason was that the music classes, there was this music theory 2 was a 1A, which is like 8:15 in the morning in winter term. And you can imagine winter in Minnesota is like,
you're not getting out of bed.
You can't trek across campus at 8:15 in the morning, man. And then expect to like be singing because it's a music theory class. You have to like sing all these different parts. Like, what are they thinking? Anyway, it probably worked out better because physics was enough to study.
What was it like studying physics? I always wished, well, it's one of those grasses is always greener things. But I always wished I was more interested in science. And like in school in Israel, I didn't learn any science. I learned a lot about the Bible, nothing about science. And as I got older and got more interested in kind of like the fabric and kind of how things work, I always kind of was pulled into sciences and kind of like teaching myself, not on an academic level, but just on an understanding level. And I don't know, in the past like 5 or 6 years, I just kind of have this like itch. It's not a realistic one. I'm not going to actually follow through with it, but this itch to like go back to school and study some science and get like really deep into it. So what was that like? What was it, and also physics I've heard is like one of those things that, can drive you like mad almost, because you're kind of like learning the fabric of things, and then you have all these questions and you can like ask the correct questions and have answers for those questions in some way. So I'm just super interested in that.
Yeah. I think, physics to me, but it does, I mean, especially the liberal arts education part of it, like that was kind of about teaching you how to ask the right questions. The whole point of that education, I think, is to like, teach you how to learn. And, I think that's a big part of what I got out of it. But more on the, in terms of what we were actually learning, I think it was just really, you do get to ask like the biggest questions, it's kind of like where science starts colliding with philosophy.
Yeah. Wow.
In some way. And those are like, the fun conversations I would have with the other students, like while we're doing our homework or something, right? While we're doing the actual problems that like have answers is like, just musing about what is the nature of the universe and, consciousness and all of that. And, it was just, it was really cool to be surrounded by a good group of people. And I think there is also something that's very, it just, people passionate about their work, whatever it is. It's really nice to be surrounded by those people, right? Totally. And like that, but in physics, the big thing that got me, the kind of love I found, that I found myself just more and more fascinated with, was light. And
apropos.
That, right? It actually kind of makes sense that I got into this line of work. But there was a big, for my big senior project, I did a report on the visible phenomena of the atmosphere.
Ooh.
So basically, what do you see when you look up? Why is the sky blue, right? And like, what other things can you see? What are the little details of like why the atmosphere looks like it does? And
why?
Halos, rainbows, etc. Yeah.
Is it refraction? Is it like a refraction? I always thought it was like a refractional thing.
So it's that. So it's the same reason why the sunset is orange. So it's that sunlight scatters. Sunlight scattering off of little particles, just scattering off the atmosphere itself, little molecules of oxygen and nitrogen. And the scattering angle is kind of critical. So that scattering angle basically depends on the wavelength of the light, which means the color. So blue light is going to scatter off of those particles at a higher angle. So picture, the particle and the sunlight coming in, and it hits the particle. It's more likely to scatter down instead of scatter just a little bit.
Right.
Because it can happen in any direction. It's a random kind of quantum event almost, So it's like it can go in any direction. But the blue ones are more likely to be scattered highly, whereas the red ones are more likely to be scattered just a little bit.
A little bit. So the sun is like
if
an
you look
offset
up,
angle.
Yeah. Well, if you look up and the sun is, maybe in the sky, but way behind you, right? And picture that sunlight coming in, that blue light is going to come down and hit you. And if you're looking at the sun or near it,
sunset,
right,
or whatever,
the blue light is actually going to be scattered. Like now the sun's here in front of me, right? There's a ray coming from the sun. The blue light's going to be scattered out. And what's going to be left coming through is the red light.
There's a red light. Wow. It's cool.
And so the sunset is orange because, like, for the same reason that the sky is blue.
Right. Just the direction of the light hitting the atmosphere. But it's not. It's nothing to do with refraction. It doesn't correlate to this, like, kind of, because, like, refraction is also like I guess it's angles, but it doesn't have to do with, like, the actual color.
Yeah. Well, this would be more related to diffraction, which is the scattering when light hits something, as opposed to refraction, which would be bending. The light bending when it encounters some change in medium.
Diffraction.
Right? So like refraction is why the light's bending through the glass.
Right. And a diffraction is more of like, it's not bending necessarily, it's being redirected. Is that kind of a...
Yeah. And often it depends on they both depend on the wavelength of light.
Right.
But diffraction tends to kind of have more colorful results often because you know those like raver glasses they make where like it makes things like a
hearts halo
or something,
or
right? But it's kind of it's a spectrum too, right?
Right.
It's you see light split into its spectrum. Those are diffraction gratings. Yeah. So it's just a bunch of little lines. So it's not like, it's not glass or something that you're seeing through. It's something that's like kind of like a screen door, right? And based on how the spacing between those little things, they end up bending, scattering light.
That's so cool. See, like this is the stuff that like fascinates me because I don't think I'll ever understand the math of it, and I don't feel like I need to, but just understanding the concepts of things, like I feel like it's so enriching to like the experience, especially like when it comes to things like light and like what we deal with all the time. And I always feel like I missed out on that,
Yeah.
So it's super cool.
Well, there's a common refrain people have of like, science, it like reduces everything, right? It kind of takes the beauty out of like our existence. And
I don't think so.
For me, it's been the exact opposite, right? Like this has like having to, writing that report and having to like look into like the details behind why the atmosphere looks the way it does means like every day when I'm going outside, I can look up and like see something like, oh yeah, that's interesting, and it's like
totally,
it's given me more beauty to appreciate.
I could see how it could, right? You could probably, you could like, reduce everything to like a number or reduce everything to a formula. But the problem is that like, we don't know so much about the universe. So you'd be remiss to really do that. Cause there's lots of, anytime you have a question that you don't have an answer to, you can't reduce it to a formula. Right. And that's when it's like, oh, how did, that's when it's like more fun and interesting of like, why,
Yeah. I mean, that's the awesome part, like of science in general is like, I think humans have this innate built-in curiosity and this drive to continue to ask why, right? And that's what science is like that. It's just that curiosity taken to its extreme. And it has this very, it's like this incredibly, pure pursuit of just like, you continue to just ask why until you can't. And then you figure something out and then you ask why again, right? And there's an interesting thing though you brought up about the math behind it, right? Because this is something that like I kind of had I was always good at math in in elementary school and high school, and then in college like I was like the worst at the math in my physics class because these my classmates were just really good at math. But like there's this thing where I wanted to become like a theoretical physicist, I wanted to like, as a kid, maybe I was 12 or something, I was like, I want to figure out the equation of a black hole, right? That was just like this idea in my mind. Like, I don't know even necessarily what that means, but like, understand like the magic numbers that go into why those things are the way they are. And you know, at that time, actually, someone had already done that. Little did I know, someone already had beaten me to it, probably by like 50 years or whatever. But, but yeah, that idea of like the math, you know, you kind of have to understand the math to do physics, is what I was told a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely true. And like, you know, half the classes that were required for the major were like math classes. And I always wanted to try to find some way, because I think there is a way to conceptually understand physics without having to understand the math.
For sure.
And for sure. You know, you can appreciate what the math tells you. Like the math is the only way to get the actual answer to how the thing is behaving. But then once you have done that and you know how the thing is behaving, hopefully you can put that into words that don't, you know, require terms from calculus.
Totally.
Right? To explain it to someone else.
Totally.
And I think that's something I ended up being fascinated by, because you know, through college was education, and like wanting to educate the populace about science, and about how it can give them this appreciation of the world around them, you know? And I think the kind of popular science educators, some of them do a good job of that and some of them don't, you know? And like, I got into like, okay, yeah, why was my high school curriculum the way it was, you know? And like, just looking into like, can that be changed? That was another one of the coolest classes I took was on, science education. And it was kind of a workshop of like, just looking into like alternate ways. And for a time after college, I thought I was going to be a physics teacher too. Really? Or like that was senior year. That was my plan.
You'd be really good at that. So that's interesting. So, what was the, you know, I like the word catalyst, but we're not necessarily at the catalyst point yet. But did you converge from physics to computer science, or did you go directly into visuals and VJing and kind of, you know, what was your exposure to VJing and visuals? Did it start in college? Where was this kind of fascination? You're just a very interesting guy, because you have this both, you know, art kind of trajectory of being an artist, and also this kind of very high level computer science coding developer kind of thing. So it's just interesting how those things converge, especially since you didn't have a start in these things, you know? Okay, you love music, you were kind of interested in creativity, but there's no, you know what I mean?
Totally. No, I would have told you in high school, I am not an artist at all. No, I'm like a science guy. Like I don't
like be pushed away from any of it.
Yeah, no. If someone was like because I couldn't draw. Like I was such a bad drawer. Like you don't even understand how bad I was. Like it was. I was playing what is it like is it Pictionary, where you have to draw something and other people have to guess what it is. And like every time I turned over the paper and gave it to my friends, they would just like burst out in laughter. like what the hell is this? Like this is not acceptable. So yeah, no, I was a bad artist, and I would tell people I don't understand art, and like, you know, that's fine. I'm more.
Did you
of a science
appreciate
guy,
it?
You know?
Did you have appreciation for it to some degree, or?
I mean, yeah, no, I definitely liked the things, but I didn't like kind of analyzing them and like talking about why I like them. Like, I didn't like that. The
cerebral experience of it.
Yeah, I certainly had art I appreciated, and you know, and it's funny because at this same time in high school, I had like, while I was zoning out in math class, I had graph paper, and I had this set of pens, these like uniball pens that were like full spectrum of colors, right? It was maybe like 8 pens, and I would like color kind of algorithmically, like in the graph paper, you know, like make little patterns, and it was just like this like mindless activity while I was zoning out.
Doodle.
But but exactly. But like at the end of it, I would have like a full, you know, it was kind of like a quilt or something, like a full graph paper, like filled with ink, you know, this sort of meditative process, and like. Awesome. It's like it's coloring in pixels, you know, according to an algorithm, and like that's kind of the thing. So I guess maybe we can come back to that, but essentially that's what shaders are, right? And so to get in a little bit more to the history, like there was this one, I didn't really do any coding. Well, actually, I did a little bit of Flash back in the day. I had like Flash MX 2001.
Nice.
A little bit of ActionScript. I thought I was going to I had, I don't know what it was, but it was like a .NET. And I tried to like make a Flash website for it and like have little Flash games. And I think there was like a Green Day song you could play if you click play on made a little music player. Yeah. Anyway, ActionScript, like a little bit of that. And then in college, there was this cool class simulating computer simulations of physical phenomena. And it kind of, it got me into coding again. And then I took some computer science classes after that. And it was just the most fun class. And I think because it was just like so constructive. It wasn't like kind of retracing steps that other scientists had already done. It was like, you can go out and build this simulation and like you can fiddle with the parameters, like very hands-on, And that was really engaging to me. So that got me a little bit into it. And so Synesthesia, the app, came out of I'll kind of tell this longer story here.
Sure.
If I
please
can go for a bit, but so I started a band junior year. Well, I guess we've been talking about it since sophomore year, but it takes a while to actually happen. But we got around to it, and with a couple friends, and we made a band called Pyroclastic Flow, and it was which is the that's like the like boiling hot like 500 degree like mountain slide that happens in a volcano. Okay. But it was basically, the idea was like, can we do electronic music but all live? Because we all kind of had this feeling of like, we love electronic music, we listen to it all the time, but sometimes you could be kind of, I back in the day, like in high school, I was kind of disappointed like going and seeing, God, who was it? I'm trying to remember, but like some of my favorite electronic musicians, and then it's a DJ set.
Right.
And I'm like, they just kind of got up there and like pressed play on their playlist, and like I wanted to hear them recreating the songs from their album live. That was like just my expectation, and and that didn't happen, and now I've come to realize that that's like there's some good reasons for that, and I've like I can appreciate it for different reasons, the whole idea of a DJ set and like dance music in general, but like that was the idea, was like, can we make electronic music but make it as live as if you're playing in a funk band or something, right? And so we built all our own instruments pretty much. Our lead singer had a gas mask that they put a little mic in, which basically blocked their voice, right? And then that mic went to an algorithm that turned their voice into MIDI.
Wow.
And then that MIDI drove a synth. So they could go like
sing
wah wah wah, and it would like play those notes in that synth, and then they could change synth by touching different fingers together of this like Bluetooth glove.
Super cool.
And then our drummer had a punching bag that he put little piezoelectric mics in, and it was basically a sampler, right? But yeah, so like for all the drum beats, he was just like
punching bag,
wailing on this thing.
Oh my gosh, that's so
seriously.
Cool.
Yeah, and then my instrument was the most boring because I basically just played keys.
Okay, you were like a proper synth.
And but I made visuals that would respond to my key presses, and so that there wasn't any we weren't just playing back any videos, right? It was all based on like everything I was doing, every knob I was twiddling and stuff had some influence in the visuals.
What was it built upon? What was the environment?
I think it was Pygame.
Pygame?
It's like this thing, you know, kind of like processing maybe, but
okay.
Yeah, where it was like, but in Python, and you could load, you could like draw squares on the screen and stuff, you know, and so I would like set up things of like, okay, draw these triangles in like a little hexagonal grid in like a for loop, and then like make them different colors while I'm holding the key down, or like make them bigger or smaller. And
interesting.
There was one really cool one actually that like still kind of a cool effect is I also had it loading these JPEGs of different like river, just different like imagery,
nature,
like satellite imagery of like river networks. And I just had like 20 of these images in a folder, and it would load them, and then while I was holding the key down, it would be continually adding a random character. Like it would load the JPEG as a string, and then add like the letter B somewhere in the JPEG, and then resave it as a JPEG, and then load it again. So it was basically corrupting the JPEG.
What?
And yeah, it
what do you
know,
mean?
just like
the JPEG was loading as a string, but it wasn't loading as an image, or it was loading as an image.
Yeah, you know, if you take like a text editor and you open a JPEG, it'll be like just this crazy string of characters,
codes,
like just random stuff, and you're like, oh, better not mess with that, or else I'll like screw up the picture, right?
So you were like literally.
So
messing
this
with
was, messing with like just add one random character in there and see what happens, and somehow it never crashed.
Crazy results. It never
somehow it never crashed. I have no idea how actually in retrospect, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Maybe it was like maybe I learned like you can't change the first like 500 characters or something.
Right.
Or
what was the results? Was it just like super like blocky pixely kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, it was. I mean,
glitchy,
basically it was the JPEG. Yeah, like you know, throwing off the JPEG algorithm was kind of cool. It would like load different blocky things, and it would change the colors in this really cool like glitchy kind of palette.
It's
you know,
cool.
A lot of like inverting colors and stuff like that.
I love that.
So that was my first foray into like. I
Visuals.
guess, I was, making visual
but
art
also
with
coding.
code.
Yeah.
And that was fun, yeah. And like of course, this was just like a little side thing for the band,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
Like not gonna be my career at all.
Right, right. But it spurred your juices, or like was it something that you were like?
Yeah,
please continue.
It was really cool to perform. You know, we only performed a few times, but it was definitely exhilarating. And what happened was senior year, I was going to become a physics teacher, like I said. That was the plan. And I realized, okay, I could become a physics teacher probably at any point in my life.
Right.
But right now I'm in a unique position where I could like go do something stupid and risky. Right? Like, don't have a family yet, like so maybe I should just try something stupid and risky for like a year, and then like go do the physics thing.
I love that. It's very brave.
And that, I mean, it's also a little bit of like, just kind of sounded more fun. So
right, you're like,
and like, I didn't have to immediately apply to jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was, there was a number of different reasons why it made sense. But with my bandmate, Natalie, we basically, I was like, you're really smart. You want to like make this thing we were doing with Pyroclastic Flow into a company? Maybe, because we developed these cool tools,
right?
And she had the vocal thing, and I had the visual thing, and it was like, I think either one of those is like something that musicians would probably want, right? And because like I think there was some stuff that we were doing that was kind of cooler than what we'd seen other people do on stages, So we just thought we had identified this like this hole in the market, and so that was the idea. and we played around with some other ideas too, but like that was the one. Like, if we're gonna do it, like, you know, we're like, okay, maybe we'll make like some trading algorithm, like do stock market or something, or like some weird stuff. And we're like, wait a minute, no, if we're gonna do this, like, it should be something we're passionate about. There's zero chance we're gonna be wanting to go through the hard thing of trying to start a company. You know,
if it's something that you're not passionate about.
Yeah, if it's something you're not passionate about, it's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it has to be this. And then that enabled us, because we were passionate about it, to like throw ourselves fully into it, right? And so we moved to Austin. Seemed like a good place to start a music tech company, with its, like, you know, tech scene and music scene and stuff. And and then kind of got down to work. But that's how, that's kind of the origin story.
Such a good origin story. I'm so happy that you took the time to tell us that story. It's really great. I have so many kind of follow-up questions for it. But really the thing that really struck me is this kind of the pursuit of your passion, and kind of, you know, like you said, it was exhilarating to perform, you know, and that must have been like a kind of unique experience for you, for somebody who is more, you know, in a classroom, or more like cerebral, all of a sudden being on a stage in front of people. And, you know, self-expression is one of those things that's very, like, addicting is not the right word, but it's extremely exhilarating, right? Self-expression, especially when you're doing it in a public sphere. So I really love that kind of like trajectory. What was, you know, I definitely want to jump to Synesthesia, like, for sure. I just want to kind of hinder on just a few more small things here.
Totally. Absolutely.
So 2 things. One was, do you remember like seeing generative and real-time visuals before you had the idea to make this kind of like, you know, Python kind of visualizer? And if so, what was that?
Yes. So, you know, I remember playing around with, I guess, like the iTunes visualizer, you know, back in the day.
Nice.
Like,
no Winamp
but
for
like,
you?
Well, so we're getting to that, but I think it was the iTunes visualizer first. And it was, they had some controls that were actually hidden.
Really? I didn't know that.
But like, you could hit different number keys, or like, you know, they had for a drop-down menu for a little bit where you could like choose different ones.
What?
And
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah. I kind of like, I think I had to look that up. You know, it wasn't like knowledge you could find within the app.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was kind of fun. Like, just that, I remember digging into that for a little bit. And then, I think, you know, in high school, like senior year and junior year, like hanging out with my friends after school, and like we'd all go over to this one guy's house and like put on our favorite music, and we'd throw on Winamp. And you know, just like be hanging out, like looking at this stuff, just kind of like mesmerized.
Trippy, you know? Bro.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it like I was just this like, it's better than not having it there
for sure.
And
for
like,
sure.
But it was always like, some of them I remember were like, that's actually like crazy to look at. Like, that's kind of weird. There's like something it's doing to my brain, you know? Some of those feedback simulations, especially. And then I think I didn't really, you know, in college, you know, like dug music visuals, but no generative stuff, or I mean music videos. And then like somewhere around when I was getting back into coding, I discovered Felix Wojtel's website.
Okay. Felix Wojtel?
It's like cake.de something. Yeah, Felix Wojtel. Who's actually one of the guys who made a lot of that, like the trippiest stuff in Winamp.
Like the milk drop kind of stuff?
Yep. The stuff, you know, especially the reaction diffusion and feedback simulation stuff. Where, especially when it's like, it looks like there's a finger like messing with the liquid, you know? Kind of pushing it around like that. He's made a lot of things like that, but I remember coming across it and just like staring at one of these reaction diffusion simulations for like, hours, just like looking at it continuously develop.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how could you write code that is making this thing like, you can't program all of that crazy fluid dynamic. Like you couldn't animate that by hand, right?
Right.
And
it's got to be some
also,
sort of.
Yeah, you can't like intentionally program that so much either. It kind of has to be this sort of discovery process.
But you understood like computer processing and like the idea of an algorithm, right? Did you did it not did you not like make the connection?
Well,
of, like,
no, I mean it was this. I just was, astounded by this like the endless variations that it was providing, because it was that was the thing that was crazy, was that I know that the code can't be that complex. It's not. I know that it's not a book length of like what it's going to do and then 10 minutes from now and what it's going to do an hour from now, right? So the fact that you could write some simple code that's going to give you this infinite variation, that all of it beautiful, was like pretty astounding to me. And that when we were making Synesthesia, taking it out of Pygame land, that was what I ended up kind of falling back to, was like, well, what was he doing? Like, what were those things? Because those things were cool, and I've always wanted to dig into those more. But also, I think that would be a good spot to start for something that would be audio reactive visuals.
Was it GLSL at that point, or not really?
Yeah,
I don't know if,
it was.
Is Milk Drop? It is. It's shaders. Okay.
Yeah, it's Milk Drop is shaders with like a CPU layer as well that does a little bit of processing and allows you to do some stuff that is not pure shader. Kind of like Synesthesia has a similar thing in the JavaScript layer.
Interesting. Super interesting. Yeah, I mean it's always cool to see people's quote unquote origins or first inspirations, and it makes a lot of sense that yours was this quote Milk Drop iTunes visualizer, because those really were. You're not like from the classic, like, oh, I went to a show and I saw these crazy visuals and I wanted to do that. You're like, oh, I played around with music visualizers and I'm like, oh, that shit is cool.
Right.
So it's very interesting, because there's a very big gap between Milk Drop, Winamp, and like now, where it's like Touch Designer, Synesthesia, kind of like all the kind of resurgence of these generative shader kind of things. Even Shader Toy, I mean, it's kind of relatively new.
Oh, yeah.
And there's like this very big gap of like, oh no, visuals are purely rendered out images, or we can do reaction diffusion in Photoshop if you blur sharpen, but we're not going to do it in like a shader per se. And I love that there is the resurgence. I feel very lucky, because I came into this stuff when the resurgence was already at its peak, or whatever. And it's not at the peak necessarily, but like at the forward up movement. And it wasn't like, I didn't have to like imagine what it's going to be like. I could just jump into Touch Designer and like get all those fun things happening. So it's super cool.
I mean, that kind of segues into like what the impetus behind Synesthesia, because it was playing around with those things as a kid, but also I did go to shows and saw some awesome visuals and like what goes into an awesome live show, and there's that like live energy that I was always after, and like coming from my experience in jazz band, like music, live music especially, is a conversation.
Totally.
And it's a conversation between the audience and the performer, and it's a conversation between the different performers on stage. And I've learned that also it can be a conversation between the people who aren't on stage but are also helping run the show, the LD and the VJ, and it's all about these feedback loops between these different the energy that the band is putting out, and how much the audience is reciprocating that. And like those feedback loops are the magic of the live music experience to me.
Totally. No, I think you hit it on the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Sure. It's just frequencies, right? Flowing back and forth. You have your brain, eyes, ears ingesting it, and then kind of pushing it back outwards with your emotion, experience, elation, and it's this crazy field of things going back and forth. And I think a good DJ, by the way, is somebody who can understand that, right? Not just go and press play, but actually play with what they're doing based on the feedback they're getting. Same as a VJ.
Yeah, and when that happens and you're there in the audience, like the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, right? Like you feel it. And you see it, you can see it physically, like sweeping over the audience of like, man, this is a moment right here, right? And it's like, you know, it's maybe gone 10 seconds later, but like that feeling is unreal.
Totally.
And
when you're doing it, it's even like blasting.
Yeah. It's. I mean, any part, if you're in a part of that feedback loop, whether you're a performer or not, like it's an incredible feeling. But yeah, it does feel great to be like, oh, I pushed that slider just right there. Yeah. But so that was, you know, that was kind of my experience of like, and that was a little bit of the impetus behind the band, right? Was like, let's do electronic music, but live, where we can have that feedback, right? And like, it's a little rough around the edges, but like, there's no click track that we have to keep up with. You know, we can do it how we want to do it. We can do it how the audience wants to do it. And like, maybe we mess something up and then that turns into this like improvisational thing that we're going to do for a little bit and like see what happens. Cool. And so then when I started looking at synesthesia, and you know, I think I went to some like local shows in Austin and saw some visuals that were basically you know, just video loops that were running. Yeah, just out of sync entirely with what the, you know, what the and there was like horns on stage, you know, there was like a live band doing a thing, and like, you know, the song stopped and like I looked back and like I don't even think the guy, you know, the VJ was there. He was like grabbing a drink or something, which is like, you know, totally understandable. Like, you know,
no judgment.
It's
I have this as a question,
small show, you know,
because I heard he
probably wasn't getting paid.
Yeah, exactly. I heard you talking about this, just about that you went to a show and you saw unsynced video, and that was what kind of one of the reasons that you wanted to do that. And I have this question here: why did it bother you so much? But I think you answered it so So you answered it so nicely of like, it's not about bothering, it's just that it could be better. It could be a feedback loop instead of just a backdrop, right?
Right.
You can have you can have lights on the band, but you could have lights that are reacting or being part of that feedback loop that the musicians are trying to emulate.
Right. And I think that's because at this particular moment, and you know, like you can have a great video only performance, right? But at this particular moment, the video looping behind the band was detracting from the energy that they were putting out, right? It actually wasn't adding. It would have been better to have nothing there. And that was something that like, because like, you know, they're going through a lot of effort to put this thing up there, right? And it actually would have been better right now if it was just not there. So that was kind of a like call to arms for me of like, okay, well, can we make the thing that is a part of that feedback loop and kind of replaces this like canned VJ loops meta game, you know? And and that was that was where we were like, okay, so it needs to be audio reactive, because that's going to be literally tied into what they're putting out, right? And then it has to be generative, because you can't have a script, right? There can't be the click track, everything pre-programmed. And so that was always one of the guiding features for synesthesia, was like, we're not going to have a timeline. It's all going to be real time. And for a while also, like, you know, to our detriment, but we eventually added it. But like, we were like, no videos either. Like this, just like, but it was an important, exactly, right? And but also because, you know, there's like tools that did video proper.
Right. Resolume has been around for a while.
Like we didn't, we didn't even have the knowledge or like, we could not have made another Resolume if we wanted to. Yeah. But also it was already made, so why make it again?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So Okay, so very interesting. So you're kind of already, is this 2014, around this kind of time?
Yeah, this was like 2015. We were working on the alpha version of Synesthesia at the time.
So at this time, you're getting deeper into this kind of programming software development, but at the same time also understanding more about what synesthesia is going to be, generative and audio reactive. What got you, like, what was the step from there into VJing and, you know, and joining Datagrama, meeting Datagrama? Like, what was the kind of, you actually, impetus is a great word. I like that. It's synonymous with catalyst, so I'm going to use it together. So what was the impetus of getting into VJing and Datagrama?
Yeah, so I'll step a little bit back from there because there's this little period where and this is kind of this is something that is a little bit kind of funny to say, but synesthesia, like, you know, my experience with that, you know, in going to that club and seeing like the videos playing was basically the idea behind synesthesia was like, we can do better than
what a
VJ can do.
Right.
We can do better than what a VJ can do. Because I thought that what we were trying to do was make an app that could run. I thought our market was musicians. And at the time, we were trying to make an app that could run, that had this really awesome audio engine so that it could basically, automatically do things that also then were like, it was kind of better content than what, like, you know, I had ever seen. Because, you know, I hadn't seen the like really good VJs at that point, right? I had seen, you know, random person who wasn't even at the controls, right? So so that was the idea, was like, well, let's make this app that can run on a musician's laptop. The musicians are always bringing their laptops around these days anyway, right? Like in electronic music, they're on stage oftentimes, so like just plug an HDMI into there and like that, then they can do their own visuals. And like, how many, you know, garage band musicians are there in the world? Well, like, okay, there's a lot, so that's a pretty good market, right? And like that was kind of the thinking of how synesthesia was going to be a success, right? And like, we kind of pushed on that. So there's like a period of maybe a year where we were developing with that in mind, where the musician was going to be our market, and like we were kind of trying to replace VJs. Like, it's I hate to say it, but like we were. And like that, you know, in my naivete, that was the goal. And that would have meant success, right? Like if we could replace VJs. But
that's so funny.
But what happened was these musicians, we kept getting like, you know, emails, and like when we'd go out and like watch someone set it up, like doing market research, like do they know any, like can they set it up on their own? And I found like I had to kind of help them a lot, like no, okay, well, you got to think about like where the projector's going to go, like you know, it doesn't look that good over there, like maybe we should put it over here, like I guess let's borrow a bar stool for this, and like how should we attach it there? Okay, well maybe I'll get like some tape. I got to figure out what the right kind of tape is to use, and like you know, HDMI, and then you have to go into like the mirror settings, and like, so I had to learn all these things. And then because we just realized again and again, musicians,
they don't want to deal with any of that.
They don't
know it, and they don't want to deal with it.
Cables, you know, they don't know about HDMI cables. And like we realized, like, damn, we got like, you know, a bunch of people to like sign up and try out this beta program, and they seem interested. Like we kind of caught their interest in doing this themselves and like leveling up their show, but they just don't have the knowledge. And I started telling people like, oh, well, why don't you get a friend out there to like run the projector thing for you? And like, you know, it's still worth it. It's it's like, it's great. And then I just realized like, shit, this is not, no, that's the VJ. The person running it for them and setting up the projector is the VJ. We didn't manage to cut the VJ out of the picture at all. And then meanwhile, that whole time we kept seeing like there were these other people who weren't musicians and therefore weren't in our market, that were like kind of these hacker types, or like, you know, just like these kind of people are like really interested in synesthesia, but we're like, but I want some controls. I want like some stuff I can move. And it's like, well, but don't you have to focus on the music? And they're like, no. I'm like, I do it for just the visuals. I'm a VJ. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, we might add some stuff like that for VJs, but it's like a smaller market. So maybe, maybe not. But we just, like it was like this bolt of lightning one day of like, oh my God, we've been such idiots. This is a VJ app.
Yeah.
This is a VJ app. We've been building a VJ app, and the people who've been most interested since day one have been the VJs. And that was a year of me learning what a VJ did,
right.
And like the like audacity to just like sit down in this market and be like, we're gonna make music visuals better by like replacing the people who are the pros at doing it, right? Like just whatever. That's something only someone fresh out of college can think like. But
in Austin especially.
yeah. And it anyway, so that was then we realized like, okay, this is a VJ app, and in order to make a good VJ app, I need to become a VJ, right? And I need to, because I need to understand this market, and so that was kind of the impetus, and like to then just become a VJ. So then I started like going to all those clubs and saying like, okay, hey, like, who does your visuals, right? And like, is there any slots I can like, work for drink tickets in or whatever, and like just get some experience doing this thing, and like hitting up all my musician friends and being like, hey, I'll come out and do visuals for you. Like bought a little projector and like a white sheet, that we could set up in various, little 5-minute setup things, and that was just getting that hands-on experience and like talking to other VJs about like what would
they want.
So what does synesthesia need to be a good VJ tool now, right? Because I thought there was still like, it wasn't just us who wanted that feedback. It was the VJs. They actually wanted a way to have this more hands-on performance and like incorporate the audio in, right? Like there was a shared dream, and so that was what we started building there. So
fascinating.
Getting into VJing and then Datagrama, right? And like how kind of leveling up there. It's kind of the next chapter, but I don't know if you had any other questions.
No, I want to go to the next chapter. No, you're doing great, dude. This is awesome. Like Datagrama, Camp Bisco, kind of like these very big shows. How did you meet? Did you meet Drow, or was it? I can't remember the other partner's name. Was it Drow at that point?
Yeah. Joao was primarily David, I think, was still a part of Datagrama.
There's another guy, I can't remember his name.
Rui.
Yes, exactly.
RUI. Yeah.
Yes.
I think I pronounced it right.
Hey, you did. You're good.
Yeah.
How did you meet those guys?
Yeah, so Joao was living in Austin, and I was doing like every networking event I could kind of do, on like because also I studied physics, right? And I was like trying to start this business. So we were doing all these like networking events to try to just like learn how you make a business, what a business is. But then also on the VJ side, all this networking with artists, and there was a pretty good tech art scene in Austin. And I met someone who was like, oh, I know this VJ. I know this VJ named Joao, and he might be interested in this thing that you just showed me, Synesthesia. And so Lara introduced me to Joao, and we had tea one day, and I showed him Synesthesia and was like, so this is a thing we're building, and
Bing, bing, bing,
I'm
bing,
just
bing,
looking
bing,
for
bing.
like any VJs to like basically get like critique it, like, is this the kind of thing you would use or not, and like what's cool about it, what's not. And he's like, actually, I've got this show coming up with and like maybe I might be able to use it. I'm like, oh cool, what's the show? He's like, oh, it's with this artist named Tipper. I'm like, wait, what? Whoa, wait, what? Tipper? Like
the Tipper?
Yeah. And because like there was at that time, I'd seen the Android Jones YouTube video of like him doing a
drawing,
particle illusion drawing,
like
hand drawing, and that was like the pinnacle of like, okay, that's a good example of this kind of live VJing that we want to be a part of, And I was like, oh, like if you'd asked me at that point, I would have said like Android Jones is the best VJ in the world, you know, and like something like that. But it, so like that was insane that he was like, what, like, wait, you're going to do a show with Tipper. Okay. I know. And I was also a big Tipper fan. Someone introduced him to me in college. And so I was just pretty excited at that point, but I was like, okay, wait, like play it cool. Don't scare him off. Be like, okay, cool. Yeah, we could. I could maybe.
The software works great.
Like, put together, maybe like a couple scenes for you, and like that would kind of maybe even be more in that line, because you know it'd be useful for us to like have that feedback with an artist, and like, you know, I'd be down to. This is like this. It totally works, as you said, but it's like kind of prototypical. So like it'd be just good to get that test experience and stuff. And like, he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so then we're working. I kind of kept working with him and developing some shaders specifically for this show.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, maybe about a month in, I helped him on this other festival, but I think he realized that like, you know, he could perform them, the shaders that I was sending to him to perform, but I was kind of performing them better in a certain sense, like because I knew them, you know, because I made them myself. Like I knew all the different quirks of the scene. So
right.
He was.
You knew
like,
the magical parameters.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was like, "Do you want to come out and do this festival, Euphoria Festival?" And it was this cool projection mapping stage, this like big dragonfly, and used some synesthesia. Yeah, used synesthesia to projection map that dragonfly, and that was like the first big event I'd VJ'd.
Wow.
That was, you know, not working for drink tickets,
right.
With like 5 people in the crowd, you know.
Yeah. Tipper. I love
yeah,
that.
well, and
That's
that
awesome.
was Euphoria Festival, which was not Tipper yet.
Okay.
Then the Tipper thing was still coming. So I guess that was kind of a test run maybe, but that experience went well, and I think he was like, yeah, like that felt good performing with you, you know. And like his thing was Datagrama is always a collective of artists,
lots of people, yeah.
And he had this dream of like, kind of similar to my dream of like VJs can be more than people just pressing play on videos.
Right.
He had this dream of like
performance.
Similarly, like VJs can be in a band.
Right.
You can have a visual band, and each different performer's
like
bringing
3
something to the
together,
end composition.
Yeah.
And that definitely, like, I think we had similar visions there, right? Of like what VJing could be. And so that really worked. And that was why he was like, you know, you want to join the band, basically, and be a part of this Tipper show. And I thought, you know, earlier that we were just going to like maybe get synesthesia used at a Tipper show.
Right.
I never thought
performing.
that I would be the one controlling it.
And part of this collective.
yeah. That was just mind-blowing.
That's so cool.
Mind-blowing experience.
Cool. I love that. Okay, let's I want to shift now to synesthesia, like more proper. I had a few more things, but we can bring them back at the end. So we spoke about the origins. We spoke about kind of like, we actually even spoke about why shaders, why GLSL. You said because that was kind of like the impetus of Milk Drop and kind of what they were doing. So okay, this is really good for audio visualization. What is the power of shaders? Like, where do they really? What is like the not pros and cons, but like what is like the definitive, like shaders are the shit because?
Shaders are the shit because they are just incredibly powerful. They are incredibly fast. And it's this dark magic that no one else knows. So there's all this weird stuff you can do that you can't do in a normal 3D environment or in like a processing environment that, you just get to leverage the GPU to do some crazy mind-bending things that people haven't seen before. So you combine all those and you get these like really cool, it's like, you know, there's just a lot of cool aesthetics that people haven't that haven't been, rehashed so much. And also just that the real-time nature of it, it allows you to do really cool things with feedback. It allows you to do really cool things with piping in audio or MIDI that you can't really do in the same way on CPU visuals. Yeah, kind of long-winded, but mostly the takeaway is that shaders are a dark art. It's just this weird kind of arcane magic that like is like totally mind-bending to get into at first. It just feels like kind of impenetrable. Like it took us like weeks to get a triangle on the screen in OpenGL, and then like it just constantly crashes and just these things where it's really hard to debug. There's like all this strange stuff that just makes it hard to grapple with. But then you see people who have made these incredible
Shader toy
on
stuff
Shader
is
Toy,
insane.
Right? Like
insane, full 3D scenes. Like
right.
What's that guy? That main guy, not Garth, with a B. He makes he has the butterfly scene, that crazy butterfly scene.
Yeah, I mean IQ probably.
I think IQ. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's like it's not even ray marching. I don't think. I think it's like pure, pure shader stuff. Like it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be some ray marching.
Well, that is ray marching. That's ray marching. Yeah,
that's true.
Ray marching is pure shader stuff. It's. Yeah, I mean, we could.
But it's a level on top, no?
Well, no. So.
Well, okay. Please explain.
Yeah. So. So fragment shaders and vertex shaders are two different kinds of shaders, and if you're familiar with the normal 3D pipeline, you probably know about both of those, right? But the idea, like for video games going back to like pretty early days, there's always been this, or I don't know, maybe it's like PS1 or something. There was like the step where you take a bunch of points and you make them into triangles,
polygons,
right? And then you can imagine those triangles being rendered kind of by the vertex shader, and then the fragment shader's job is to paint those, right? So they would all be gray. They would be but you have the geometry of the scene set up from the vertex shader.
In like a 2D space of where they are, where each thing is in 2D space.
It's
meaning like there's 3D, but you're rendering it as a 2D image, right? Of a raster.
So I think I described it a little bit wrong, but basically you have a bunch of points, and the vertex shader's job is to take that list of points and turn them into triangles. And its job is to understand in 3D what those triangles look like, and are some of those triangles blocking other triangles and stuff. It kind of sets up your 3D scene.
Okay.
And then the fragment shader's job is to paint each of those triangles and give them like a grass texture or something, right? And then the ones that are parts of clouds should get a white texture, right? And so you might have a different fragment shader for different triangles on the scene. But the whole point of this was to allow you to render a complex 3D scene with as little computation as possible. So the vertex shader would run once per vertex, right, in that list to make the triangles. And then the fragment shader would actually run once per pixel of those triangles. Wow. And usually per pixel is like, you're at millions of pixels very quickly if you're dealing with any sort of normal resolution, right?
Yeah.
So you obviously can't do that on the CPU, and you need to be writing a very short program. So like early days of video games, fragment shaders could only be like take this grass texture and like don't do any extra math, just put it on the triangle, right? And so you'd see like tiling issues, right?
Interesting.
And yeah. And then as GPUs got better, you could start doing more interesting things in the fragment shaders. So you could make a surface appear kind of shiny, right? And like you could make it like add some crazy like cool flame shimmering effect to it or something, right? And you'd be running a more complicated program per pixel, but the GPU could handle it because GPUs got better. And then IQ, actually, if you want to go to my
sure.
screen, let me look at IQ rendering worlds into triangles. Yeah. So this is
4,000 bytes. Wow.
Yeah. So this is like, this was his idea, as far as I know. There might have been someone who did this earlier, but he's definitely one of the, like progenitors of this style of rendering. So instead of having all these triangles way out in the scene, instead you only have 2 triangles. And you take your camera and you put the 2 triangles to make a rectangle right in front of the camera. And like that's the 3D scene. So like imagine opening up Unity or like Unreal or something. You have your camera and you just put 2 triangles right in front of the thing.
Like a plane,
and you say
basically.
All the rest of that 3D environment, we're going to throw that away. We don't care about that. And then how much can I do just in that fragment shader, right? With the camera like fully focused on that fragment shader.
So you're just wow, that's the precursor to this kind of style of shading?
That's the
like
precursor to ray marching and
no
the
3D geometry, just like we have one piece of 3D geometry, very simple, and then everything else is on like the actual pixels, like the pixels, right? Like of each pixels themselves.
Exactly.
That's so fucking weird. Like such a strange thing to think about. No, like
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's totally crazy.
It's crazy.
And that's what all of
it's
this
also
stuff...
like so backwards because you're like, okay, 3D is complex. There's complexity in like the model and the thing and the scene. There's like 100 trees. No. We'll be complex, but we'll be complex in 2 dimensions. It's just so crazy.
Yeah. No, it seems like just ass backwards, right? But like
totally.
it's because these GPUs, the power exploded, and then like people started making cool art with this. And there's this thing in art, like I'm sure you've experienced, where like some limitations kind of often can breed creativity, right?
Yeah.
Like if you sit down and you can just have whatever you want, you like. I at least for me, I need limitations. Like that's when I get most creative, like MacGyvering stuff, and then it's all this stuff is well. So this kind of makes sense for 2D stuff, right? Like I guess this one is like let's see. Let's go to like some basic 2D one.
This is Synesthesia, by the way.
Yeah, this is Synesthesia. Yeah. Okay, and we'll do some audio later, but okay, so 2D stuff, like a basic 2D pattern, right? There's no 3D geometry here. Kind of makes sense how you can picture like the 2 triangles here, right? Like one right here and one right here, and then it's just the fragment shader. So the weird thing that you brought up is ray marching. So then IQ goes, okay, so we threw away the 3D system. What if we made our own 3D system in the pixel shader? And so like, okay, write a program that sets up a camera and actually like launches a bunch of rays through space. And basically he recreated a 3D engine in the 2D engine after throwing away the original 3D engine. And that's what ray marching is.
It's interesting because I don't know the trajectory, but ray tracing, like the rendering, kind of works in a similar way where instead of shooting rays all over the world, you're just shooting rays from the camera so that you don't have to render the whole scene per se. Some render engines work different. Like path tracing doesn't work like that way, but ray tracing, modern ray tracing only shoots rays from the camera, but it seems like it's almost similar, but it's like the rays in the marching, they're not hitting. I guess they are hitting a surface, but it's like a assigned distance field is 2D. Per se, right?
Yeah, assigned distance field is no. You can have 3D ones.
You can, but it's still
often it's often it's. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to make. So if you're trying to make a 2D thing, you would use a 2D signed distance functions, and if you're trying to make a 3D thing with ray marching, you'd use 3D ones. And yeah, like what you do is like you set up a camera, and like, the math there isn't really that important, but basically you set up a camera, and you can picture it like, like your eye or whatever, right? And you have some unknown stuff in front of you that's out in 3D space. And all that stuff is defined by these distance functions. And so you say, like, if I'm within some range of this distance function that's located at some point XYZ out there in 3D space, then I hit that thing, right? And so a simple one is a sphere. If I am within length 1 from point, 333, then
draw a sphere.
Then I hit that sphere. Yeah. But the way that it works with the camera is, and ray marching is, you basically project rays out in every direction from that camera, and you step them through space. So that's why it's called ray marching. So this is what's being shown right here, right? So this is blue is your camera, these are your shapes, and this is a 2D representation, but it's the same thing in 3D. And this is you have these 3 distance functions. You say, okay, which one of these is closest? And you step all your rays that amount forward. And then you check, okay, have I hit anything? Right? And for this ray right here, no, it didn't hit any of these objects. This one right here would have, right? But then once you're here, you check again. You say, okay, well, what's the minimum distance now? And then you step your ray forward again. And you do that again. And you do that again. And so all of these rays are going out in parallel. And it's 1 ray per pixel, right? Because you don't need to render any rays that are not going to appear on the screen. So basically each pixel is doing its own little stepping into this kind of unknown 3D space. And then when it hits something, it stops stepping. And there might be other rays that have to continue their thing. But when each of those rays, maybe some of them have stepped 100 steps, some 250, each of them comes back and says, hey, I marched this far. And then you can color the scene based on that. If you set up some lights, you know where, how light would bounce off that surface. And basically recreating, like the 3D engine through ray marching.
In a 2D world. Or on a 2D plane, let's say.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a cool illustration.
It's so
actually.
weird. I love it. I love it how crazy it is, like it's such a crazy that scene with the that one.
Snail's pretty rad.
Yeah, the snail. I mean, like there's no geometry. It's just
it's all made with sign distance functions.
It's just crazy. It's crazy. Look how real. It's just so photoreal. It's just so. There's something so it is dark magic. It really is. It really is.
Right. And
especially at that level.
So these are your primitives that you can work with. And so basically you copy paste this into a shader, and then you can start you start shaping things, and it's all math, and it can look intimidating, but I'm being really honest when I say this. It helps to have a little bit of math background, but the other thing about making shaders, except IQ and making things like his, but making shaders, so much of it is trial and error. And you don't really know what every change you make to the code
is gonna
do. And some of the worst shaders I've made, I started out with a very specific idea of what I was going to sit down and try to make. And you can't really have that process. You want some of the best things that I've made were just exploration processes of I'm going to kind of fiddle with this and see what happens and follow what seems to be intriguing.
Totally. I mean, that's what I fell in love with Touch Designer and Notch. was that the exploration. I feel like as I got deeper into Unreal, I lost a little bit of that. Now I'm kind of finding that place that I can explore in 3D space in kind of like a classic render engine of like, not necessarily like what can I break, but like what can I do here that's going to be totally not what I'm used to or not what I'm supposed to do, let's say, and get interesting results. But that exploration, whatever I'm in touch and just like fiddling and playing with parameters and adding things and doing things that I don't know what I'm doing, that's really when you do get the best results. And it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. And I think this is a great place to jump into, your set fully. We've kind of started, we've kind of shown synesthesia, but let's see what you got for us. I'm going to let you take it away. We're now in synesthesia land.
Synesthesia.
For anybody that doesn't know, synesthesia is the phenomena of mixing up your different, what are they called? Your senses. So you'd see colors, or you'd hear colors, or smell colors, or you'd see smells, or you'd see sounds, let's say, in this situation. It's my really good explanation of synesthesia.
That was good.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's when your wires get crossed in your brain, right? So obviously audio and visual are the ones we're interested in here. Okay, so let's look a little bit at like what I do for projection mapping stuff. Like,
yes.
I really love working on projection mapping stuff. I think it like is like just perfect for shaders. And there's this a lot of the stuff with Datagrama that I work on are projection mapping things like Boom, right? The big Psytrance festival in Portugal, which we met at, and there was this really cool stage there in, I think it was 2022.
Yeah.
Right.
Designed by Plasma Lab.
Right.
One of my favorite
Lab.
stages.
That's the shirt I'm wearing, actually.
Oh, nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah, they make
one of my
too.
favorite stages to ever project on. It was so unique with the depth. Like, really not a lot of stages had that.
Yeah. It's got... Yeah, it's like very three-dimensional, and like, yeah, we had just some... And then there was this like center screen too that... It was, I think some of the best VJing in my life was on that stage. Actually,
definitely.
Yeah, it was with Julius, and it was a collab. Just like, I think it was between me and him and the laser guy, and it was like, I think that was like one of the best sets I've ever done.
Hell yeah,
and it was, dude. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But
such a good
one. Getting projection mapped content, through synesthesia onto this. Yeah, like basically I'll show you my projection mapping workflow in synesthesia.
Okay.
And it was kind of to get around this problem that I saw with projection mapping of like, how do you make a bunch of really cool content for a stage and then you can't reuse it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It works only for that one stage. And then it's it's basically like time, but you can't use it on another project, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you work in 3D. Like, have you had that experience?
So I have. This is something that definitely most 3D artists run into. I build all my scenes in real time so that when I come up with techniques for projection mapping, I could just switch out the model. Right. So I have the same ethos of like, if I'm going to build a whole system, I don't want to have to only be able to use it once. I want to be able to use it multiple times.
Right. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of like the fundamental problem with projection mapping, these awesome custom stages that exist 1 year and then never again, right?
Yeah.
So like you have your techniques, and this is basically my technique working with shaders for doing that, solving that same problem. Mm-hmm. And so you start with the, whatever the template is,
pixel
map. The pixel map, and it's
Another shout out here goes to Echo from Datagrama, who literally drew by hand this pixel map.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just insanely detailed work here, and then what I do is, and sometimes so Echo made that in this case, but if you don't have that, I'll go with my camera and take a picture of the stage, and then go bring that into Photoshop and have to do the pen tool and tracing all that stuff out, right?
Yeah.
That gives you something with all the different paths, and then I will come in and color them in pure red, pure green, and pure blue, and mask it. And often I'll add white as well.
And a white outline?
Yeah, a white outline is usually what I do, or white line work.
Mm-hmm.
On
the edges.
On the edges of various large sections, and there's specific reasons for this color palette. Basically what I'm doing here is a thing called channel packing. So I'll make a whole bunch of masks like this, but maybe one looks like this, and then maybe one looks like this, right? So it's also RGB, but different parts are green now, different parts are blue, different parts are red, right? I'll export all those and pull those over into Synesthesia, where I've got these different masks, and then I'll edit the shader so that it's reading the media, and it will behave differently based on which color pixel it's sitting on top of.
Beautiful.
If that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. And so that's a thing called channel packing, when you're taking, because it's not really I'm not really using the media as an image anymore. I'm using it as data, right? Encoding the different parts of the structure in these different colors. And then up here, I've got it so the kind of glowing pulsing part is happening only on green.
On the green, right.
Yeah. And let's see, is this the full? There's a better version of this. Is it this one? Hey, it's this one. Okay. That one's got a little more fine detail. And yeah, you can actually see this outlines the stage pretty well.
Amazing.
And it turns what are these big green sections, I'm pretty sure this is this one, right? That's a big chunk of green. But if you look at what Synesthesia is giving us, it's giving us this cool kind of line work, cross thing, right? And that's just something you get from the shader. That's something that is just it's an emergent behavior from the fluid dynamics.
Super cool.
Which is pretty sweet.
Would you can we jump into one of the shaders and see how they're written, kind of where you're using this technique?
Let's do that.
Oh, interesting. Is this the same idea, what you're doing here with the triangles?
This one, this is a clip we've used with Datagrama.
But it's an RGB
This is
clip?
pure black and pure white.
So sick.
Right, and so this is where you get really powerful, combining media with the shaders, and especially just with the juicy yeah, this is then the stage as well. But let me turn on the mapping as my primary. Yeah, mapping should be my primary. So where is day at? Let's see, did I put it down here? It's not that one. It's not that one. It's not this one. Probably because it's not that one.
Dude, this one is so cool.
Yeah.
What's the white and clip look like with the media clip?
The raw clip?
Yeah.
I'll show you. It's
is this a shader or is this a video?
Nah, that's just media.
Just a video. Media.
Yeah. Yeah, let me see. Does this have
After Effects?
Probably. I did not make it. That's one of the ones that Joao found. It just plays so nicely with these, with these
so
ones.
Nice. Such a nice, like, morphing shape. Just like makes it so nice. It gives it like, that's what my favorite visuals are, like when it's something structural breaking into something not structural. So like, okay, you get a defined shape that becomes, weird lines or something like that. That's really my favorite type of visuals.
Okay, so
Sorry, we're on tangents here.
No, it's fine. It's because I'm trying to find this this mapping shader and like.
You have too many.
I have too many shaders. Yeah. I really do. And it should be in this because I literally sorted this by last use state.
That's what I was thinking, though. But this is like classic at Boom. So at Boom, we sit in a, during the day, we sit in a container that's hotter than it is outside and try to come up with better things for that night. And then like by the last day, you're kind of like at version 10 of your scene and you're just like adding more shit and adding more shit. And you're just like,
it's so true.
What am I really doing here? What am I adding that's going to make it better? Oh my God. But then you add the one thing that like blows your brain and you're just like, oh, okay, it was all worth it.
Okay.
And
so
another thing, the benefit, the beauty of real time and generative is that when you play and add things, you're actually doing it for the future. So even if that doesn't work for this stage specifically, because you built it the way that we're building things generatively, you can now use it for the next one.
Okay, so the first thing I do is let's turn this user image, this media, into the data, right? And it's just this code that basically says if my red is greater than my green and blue, then I'm gonna call myself red, right? If green is greater than my red or blue, this .r.b, then I'm green. And we do that right here to just save this thing called dat. That's just my variable that's going to be holding that data. So dat is going to be holding this media data per pixel, right?
Okay.
And then, so if we just search based on dat, what I'm doing, so an A is the white. So like dat.r is going to give me, that's going to be 0 when I'm blue, green, black, or white. And it's going to be 1 when it's red, right?
Gotcha.
Same for G, same for B, and A is white in this case instead of alpha. So I'm taking the white channel and passing that to this logo, but let's now look at where logo is used. So it's used there, and it's used. Okay, this is the big one. So basically what we're doing here is we're the normal like glacier feedback. We're feeding the simulation more color on those white pixels. And if I do full reveal, that's all the edges. So see how it's kind of flowing off of the edges here?
Yeah.
So that's that white in action. And I can like turn that down, and now it's kind of free again, right?
Oh,
turn that on, and it starts feeding from those edges, right?
Right. Reveals.
And so then
like
that's
the pieces. Oh, and that's that white edges that you were showing before. Like of the edges of the stage. Got you.
That's that white outline, right?
Interesting.
That's what's feeding that. And so then this green section is, let's come on right here. Let's look at where I use dat.g. Okay. Dat.g is right here on this green. Right. So I'm running a second reaction diffusion system. Forgot about this. Underneath the first. So like, yeah, it's kind of crazy, but you write all this code for this first reaction diffusion system, and like you do it just in the red channel. So like I could show you down here, I think, if I do. Let me look at what my passes are called, like buffet. If I just show you what buffet looks like, so I'm going to take the raw thing here, return texture, buffet. Okay, there we go. And if I just do the red channel of that, alright, cool. So that's the simulation.
That's the simulation. Oh wow.
Yeah, and you can see when I put those edges in, right? I'm just making that part brighter, and that naturally causes the rest of it to flow out based on the simulation.
Right.
And this is just in the red channel. So I was like, okay, well, we have these other channels open. We have a green channel and a blue channel that aren't even being used. And the GPU is kind of already processing them, since it's going to be processing colors. So we could use the green channel too
to do something else.
So I added another little reaction diffusion thing to that channel.
But are they talking to each other?
And so that's actually, this one's fed by the green in the mask. They're not talking to each other. There's no feedback.
They're on top of each other.
Exactly. Except when you get to the end, this last pass is the coloring pass. And this is like pretty typical for any shader, any feedback shader. You'll, or like simulation shader. You have your simulations running, and then you have you have to color it pretty at the end, right? Because like everything's going to basically be like this, where it's the simulations running in this normalized space between 0 and 1. You don't want to introduce color when you're like at that part of the process, because it's just like you want to keep your patterns normalized between 0 and 1. You want to keep the numbers sane, and like color you can just do at the end based on those, right?
Okay.
Based on these more simple patterns. So that's what this code down here, this last pass code is all for, main image 4.
That's like the actual shading of the picture, like the metallic kind of looking thing.
Yep. So get this last buffer, buff C, and save those, and then you can see this. These are different color palettes that you can mix between. So if I'll bring back the color again, right? And like these different color palettes, right?
Nice, beautiful.
And then these different colors get applied to those textures that are just between 0 and 1, and mixed, and you do a little bit of kind of fake 3D lighting.
Right, to give it directionality.
Yep.
Interesting.
And yeah, that's so yeah, all that's to say, that's what those little pulses are on the bass. And like when the bass picks up in the song, you should see those pulsing a little more. There we go. Yeah. And if we wanted to make them interact, I don't know, there could be something interesting there. But like the green simulation's running here, the red simulation's here. So like I could make the red, feed the red with the green. Green times, and you probably, like, if I just feed this raw like 1.0, it's gonna like completely max out the thing probably. So I don't know. Let's try that at least. And okay, yeah, so there's like there were some little speckles. Yeah, there's some little speckles, I think, that's kind of like,
actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely more intense. It's definitely a little too intense, so you gotta tone that down a little bit. Let's divide by 10 again. Yeah, but there you go. Now it's kind of feeding from there, and like it's maybe even more. Cut that in half again.
Now they're like rippling out in some fashion.
Right. So like when this lights up and grows, it's now doing the same thing that this white
on the on the red one
that the white used to be doing. Yeah. And you can get like this system. Let's see. Do I have one with that right here? Another feedback system that's got feedback. Oh yeah, actually, Shrouded. So this one is using those channels I was talking about, where like, yeah, you run the simulation only on the red channel, and like green and blue and alpha can be calculated for almost the same cost. So you might as well. And like this is something that Felix Wojtal again came up with. This is based on his work, and it's like actually run the same simulation in red, green, blue, and alpha channels, but feed the red into the green, feed the green into the blue, feed the blue into the alpha, and the alpha then back to red. And then each of these different colors is pretty much one of those channels. And so you get, it's just like, yeah, you get this much more interesting, let me see, do I have a feedback? Yeah, I have a feedback knob. So if I turn this up, turn this down, get something a little more basic going on. Okay, pulsing out, we'll stop that. And we will increase this as well. Okay, and you can see it's interacting with the different colors already, because I've got, again, in this one, some, like, see how it's kind of sees that boundary around where the center screen was?
Yeah.
So if I choose the simplest one, I'll choose just the white and the red one, like that. Sure. And this was the other stage. We could look there. That's a little bit more of like larger canvas to see. Yeah, this was the other stage of Boom.
Less impressive.
Definitely less impressive, but it gives us it gives us an easy way to see what's going on with the shader a little easier than such a complex design. And actually, I could add the pyramid media. That would be cool. Let me do that real quick.
Oh, you can overlay it on top of it?
At Burning Man. We had this pyramid stage, but it's got really simple geometry with nice space between it, so it'll be easy to see what's going on.
This is the Prayer of Light pyramid?
Yeah, Light Harvest, the Vessel of Light.
Light Harvest, Vessel of Light, Vessel of Light.
Yep. Vessel of Light was what that was called. And
that's a really big one, that pyramid.
It's a big one. Yeah, it was like an 80-foot tall pyramid at Burning Man.
Yeah.
And okay, so I got the media in here. Okay, cool. So this is a smaller version of the pyramid, just to kind of show better. But so you could see these pulses where it's kind of chasing itself. That's that feedback between the different channels: the red channel, green channel, blue channel, alpha channel. And if I turn that all down,
wow.
Yeah, you'll see less of that effect. It's just so cool to be able to liquefy the geometry of the stage.
Yeah.
Like it's such a unique aesthetic, Yeah, it's in 2D, and there's, I have nothing but respect for all the just insane things that in 3D people have figured out how to do for stage designs and stuff. But there's so much more that I think that is left to be explored in the 2D realm,
Totally.
And that's, yeah. Wow, I need to change this song ASAP.
As we're talking about Burning Man, shitty music comes on.
I know. Yeah, coincidence.
It is very fascinating to see how you can manipulate because projection mapping, really the crux of projection mapping, or not the crux of the highlight or the best projection mapping is playing with the structure, right? and you can do that with light and shadow, but you can also do that with just the line work, right? You know, edge detection is a big thing, and you know, it's really about kind of finding that fine tune. I've been really trying to, like, what I've been doing a lot lately is my 3D model is in 3D space, but the UVs of the 3D model, I have two versions. One is like, you know, a beautiful substance painter kind of like thing, but then the other one is the pixel map. So if I feed anything that's the pixel map to the model, it sits on it like it would in 2D. But now if I move the pieces, they're moving in 3D space with the 2D pieces, 2D representation on it. So now I can feed a shader to the 3D model, and the shader kind of respects it kind of in a 2D space. But now if I move the pieces in 3D space, I'm now breaking it up in an interesting way. And that's like, you know, this is like a superpower that I need to get more into, really, because it's like
dude, I mean, imagine combining this with a 3D workflow, right?
I mean, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. So, well, do you want to show anything else while we're here?
I think that's like a pretty good intro to just like how I use synesthesia for projection mapping. This kind of cool workflow that I don't think I've, I think it just kind of organically happened from working with Datagrama since that first like Euphoria festival. They had this cool dragonfly stage, and I like loaded some of the PNGs of the dragonfly into Synesthesia and was just running it through some shaders, and was like, oh, sometimes it looks best when it's like not a full color composition and like with all this gradients and stuff. Sometimes it's cool when it's just pure black and white, and like, you know, just like you saw earlier, right? That the clip with like where it's all on or all off, right?
Yeah.
In Glacier, and then like, yeah, just seeing that idea of like, oh wait, and if we map it right, then the media running in the synesthesia shader, like you can kind of make it look like the geometry is dripping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then that led to the idea on, you know, bigger stages, and as I'd gotten more comfortable with shaders, of doing this channel packing method. And then just kind of developing these certain shaders that really give me a lot of control live over just, you know, liquefying the geometry and getting that unique aesthetic. And, you know, combined with audio reactivity, it's a fun thing. And that's how I like to do the projection mapping.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, thank you so much for showing us that. And I think we'll definitely have a supplemental episode where we can have an intro to GLSL and kind of a more showcase oriented intro to synesthesia. This is not like,
to do that.
Hell yeah, this is not like a pat you on the back or tug your junk kind of thing. It's more of like a really honest. I really feel like, and you know, I don't use synesthesia. I don't have a license. You can give me one for free. It's fine. But I don't.
Did I not give you one?
I don't have a license. I've only seen people use it. I've played with it once in a show. In a like random desert rave, somebody had it that was playing with me in a Versus, and I played with it. But that being said, like every time I see it, every time I like, especially when Datagrama uses it or you use it, and I'm seeing it being used in like this very mindset of like, what is projection mapping? What is powerful in projection mapping? It like creates this like spur in my head that's just like so exciting. And then, you know, the audio reaction tools inside of it are so freaking good that I'm almost like, I just want to use it just so I could pipe OSC audio from there into Touch Designer, you know, like
you could totally do that. Nah, that's something with Pro, you can OSC output all the audio variables. So yeah, you could literally just use it in like as a, you know, an audio processor.
And I said this to Alex as well, like the fact that you're a VJ focus tool is something that's very unique. There's a lot of tools out there that are, Resolume's a good example because Resolume is a tool for VJs, but it's not only. It's a tool for many different types of, media. I don't like to call it a media server, but it is kind of a media server. It is a tool for media. Notch is a motion graphics tool that you can use as a VJ. Unreal is definitely none of those things, but I use it as a VJ tool. Touch Designer is an open-ended environment. Synesthesia is made for VJs to perform. So, props to you, kudos to you for making that in that vein.
Yeah. Well, that's how it was developed. Like we were talking about where I realized I had to become a VJ, and then it was through these iterative cycles where I would go out and do a show with Datagrama where, or others with I need this new feature, or I was talking to this other VJ and they came up with this idea because I could see that they were doing it in this other software and oh, we need this. And then we'd add it and I'd test the beta version at the next show. Right. And see okay, that feature worked. It's good to go. Right. Yeah. So stress testing it in the field and running it by other VJs. I was joking about, did I give you a license? Cause that was one of the things in the early days of Synesthesia where we were oh yeah, use this, just use it and tell us what's broken, tell us what's terrible about it. Right.
Now you guys are selling thousands of units. You don't need to give me a free one.
Oh, thousands of units a day. Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. Big time. The VJ market's just a massive market, right? Everybody's clamoring to get in here. Yeah. It's but it was designed with that in mind, and I think that's one of the things that I hope we can keep in Synesthesia is staying focused on the fun of performing as a VJ, and putting that kind of front and center.
And another thing about Synesthesia is so great is it's creating a smaller barrier between coding and performing and generative art. That's for me, node-based graphical systems are that kind of I don't need to code to make generative things and simulations because I have nodes. And what you're doing is it's another level of that because you're basically allowing me to have a graphical interface, a GUI that I don't even need nodes or scripting to be able to affect and play with generative graphics. And I think now that you're adding this new features of the IDE kind of inside of the graphical interface, it's another layer of that. And I'm sure that your guys are going to create even more layers of you don't need to know how to script, or maybe you need to know how to script, but you don't need to be a high-level scripter to be able to play with these things.
No, I think probably less than 5% of the people who use Synesthesia know how to code in GLSL. It could be less than 1%. Wow. It's it's not focused on that at all. It's focused on being a way to perform, to harness the power of shaders, right? And be able to perform them in this intuitive way that lets you not have to focus on the fact that there's code, right? Because that, I've used Touch Designer a lot too, and it can be hard sometimes to anything is possible, right? But then turning it into a interface that feels comfortable to perform with is kind of a different thing.
Totally.
You have to end up making your own. You have to make the cool thing. Yeah. Then you have to make a way to perform the cool thing.
Right. Yeah.
And if you don't do that, it might not come out right when it comes time to perform it, even though you know that it's capable of all these cool looks, right?
For sure.
So that's that. Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. Is Synesthesia removes you having to do that. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and you just have that intuitive mappable user interface built in.
So with all that being said,
locked into the music.
You locked into the performance and the what did we call it before, the exchange of frequency,
feedback.
The exchange of energy, the feedback.
Feedback systems all the way down.
speaking of feedback systems, I want to go into a more esoteric kind of conversation with you about different things. But first, I want to talk to you about your second company, or maybe third, I don't know, but your other company, AlphaChannel, and kind of the advent of, the future of performance, the future of events. A quick overview, and please, stop me if I'm saying it wrong, but
Sure.
AlphaChannel is a augmented reality focused party, or I should say event-based platform where users or maybe clients can enable augmented reality effects and augmented reality features to all the people at their event. And, is that good?
I would say it's visual production for live music shows in augmented reality. And
Nice.
so kind of what does that mean? Like I think that's coming, I think we have been trying to make shows more immersive for years, right? I mean, as long as humanity's been putting on shows, which has been since day one. This is just in our blood to do this. Anyway, the augmented reality, or so we've been trying to make these shows more and more immersive, right? And sorry, I have to stop this music, it's distracting me. Projection mapping, right? Lasers, lights, visuals that you have to just always be bringing a bigger and bigger screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of this endless arms race in the world of in the current visual production world.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it colliding with augmented reality. I see augmented reality coming, and I think that the first time I tried it was actually at Burning Man, weirdly enough, or maybe apropos enough, but it was someone brought the HoloLens 2 out there, and I had never seen anything like this. It's a headset that you can put on, and it is see-through. I have one around here somewhere, but they were touching the air, and like there was something there,
Mm-hmm.
I was looking over at them what are they doing? There's nothing there. Why are they grabbing at the air? And because this is an augmented reality headset that can project holograms in space around you, and you and I can still be looking at each other, right? So I'm sure that if VJs are watching this, they understand this difference, but that's the fundamental difference between AR and VR. VR blocks out the world around you. AR projects things into the environment around you. And you could still be there with your friends talking to each other, right? It's just there's other stuff there too. So after that experience, I was like, oh, okay, well that's going to be the future of live music visual production. Right? We're trying to make immersive shows. That's how you can give people full immersion. So that's what AlphaChannel set out to do.
Yeah.
Was figure out how that's going to work. How are shows going to work in the era of augmented reality visual production? And it was a separate project that from the same, started under the same company as Synesthesia, but called AlphaChannel. And that's a startup I was working on for a couple years.
So I come from virtual production, and in virtual production, a big advent of virtual production is augmented reality, because virtual production, the whole idea of it is mixed reality. So, you have an XR stage, a volume of LED screens, and you're projecting onto the LED volume a virtual background. But what if you want to have something in front of the actor or character or whatever? You now need to make an augmented reality plate. We call it a front plate, which is essentially a hologram right? That's viewed through the perspective of the camera, that's ingested into the world with shadows and reflections to make it even more immersive. So this is something that I've been playing with for a while, and something that I see as a very clear trajectory for media. Now, when it comes to events, the problem or the bar of entry is that if you want to create immersion, it's not very immersive if the only augmented reality thing that I'm seeing is on a big screen from the perspective of a camera. It definitely is cool if I'm watching the event in a stream, or even if I'm part of the crowd and all of a sudden I see a camera feed of myself dancing and there's things falling on me. That's cool. That's interesting. But where it becomes really immersive is the per person experience of me standing in the crowd and seeing something from my perspective. You know, and this is something that and
I can still hear you, by the way, but let me just grab one of these. I have it right here.
I just want to say that I think that, like, you're totally right that the next future or advent of live events is augmented reality, and we've even seen it already with phones, where you can pull up your phone, and again, this goes back to like the perspective of the camera, where each phone is a camera perspective, and you can get kind of like a Snapchat filter in your phone in the event, and everybody's together. But again, we're stepping back because it's not immersive to pull up your phone. So, you know,
I mean, you talk about it's about the least immersive thing you can do.
It's the least
literally
immersive thing
about, I mean, the phone is the thing that connects you to the rest of the world.
Yes.
It's the opposite of being right here.
100%.
Right?
And you could see it.
And you're taking this big field of view, this incredible immersive stage that people have made, and you're saying, I just want to view like 3 inches of it.
There's a very big reason why that technology is not happening everywhere, because I've done events where we've used this technology of, you know, you download an app when you walk into the venue and you can use your phone. People do it for a second. They see it, they're like, oh, cool, and they put it away. And that's not fun. So, you know, these glasses are going to get smaller. They're going to get more compact. They're going to get more powerful. And, you know, I see a future, and I think that you do too, of like, you come to a venue, you come to an event, you get a pair of glasses, and you can put them on if you want. You could take them off if you want. You put them on, and all of a sudden, the visuals are outside of the screen. They're outside of the stage. They're around you. They're in front of you. They're behind you. You know, they're interacting with the audience. You can touch them. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, please, like, what do you see for this future? What is happening?
So the part of the problem with that, as an artist and like someone doing this, is like, where do you start then? When you can do all that, right? When all of the boundaries have been removed, like, you kind of have to come back to the fundamentals of like what makes a compelling show. And, you know, especially with this brand new technology, I think it's really easy to like run away with all the wild possibilities you can do. But like, I think to make a good show, it's going to look a lot like what we have right now. You know, there's going to be a stage. There's going to be something like lights. There's going to be something like lasers. There's going to be, you know, I think that's kind of where we started, at least. And then, you know, the sky's the limit. You can allow people to not just be immersed in this world that's changing, right? And like, hey, stage changeovers now. It's not like this thing where you have to wheel in a whole bunch of thing and like, you know, cost millions of dollars. It's
holograms.
It's something that you just like press a button, right? Yeah. And the stage changes. It's great. But interactivity. So like, I was showing this thing, and I was going to try to pull up this clip of, we actually did like a, but I'll just put this on for a sec. Just to kind of show you what this is like, the state of the art from 2019. Right. And this was the Microsoft HoloLens 2.
State of the art from 2019. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, but like that's still like the best AR headset on the market.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
We were talking offline as well about like the Vision Pro, how it's like marketed as an AR headset, but it's really not. Like just because you see a video pass through,
right.
that's not augmented reality. They can call it that, and Apple loves doing that shit of calling things what they're not, but it's not. You know, augmented reality should be a pass through where you see imagery projected onto what's in front of you.
I think that's a really key part, and that's kind of what you're talking about with the phone thing, and with what you're doing in augmented reality virtual production, right?
Yeah.
Which, like, I think even a year ago that was called AR production, right? Or 2 years ago or something. Like, I don't know if people were using that term this much.
I mean, in virtual production, it's always been called virtual production. XR and AR is kind of a newer form of saying it, but back in Avatar 1 was using virtual production. Even Lord of the Rings, the original, was using virtual production. But that was more of like you had a sound stage with people in motion capture suits, and like the director would see a 3D version of the graphics in a they had a virtual camera. They were running around the motion capture, and they would see a virtual representation of what was going on with the actors. That was first virtual production. Then it went to like Final Pixel, a final picture of like, I'm going to shoot in camera VFX. And the AR is something that not really used in production. It's mostly used in events where you'll be at a Coachella or whatever, a big event, and they have a live stream. We did it in Boom, actually. We did it for the live stream at Boom. That was my first time working with Datagrama, where we had, static cameras, but you basically put an overlay that respects the physicality of the space. And then if you have camera tracking, then you can move around it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not really augmented reality because you're only seeing it through a screen. You can only view the result through a monitor.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, just untangling all of that like morass, right? Like that's something that I had to grapple with, like trying to start this company and trying to get the pitch down and like figure out. People were constantly getting confused. They're like, what, you're going to hand out a headset at a music festival? Like, dude, are you insane? Like,
$1,000.
Why would you even go to the music festival? You could just do it from your bedroom. Right. And it's like, no, this is not VR. It's AR, right? And like, you have to go there because you have to be with the people, because live music is a social experience. And like, I have nothing like, like the things that popped up during COVID of like the virtual
events,
virtually attending live events, like those are awesome, and like those did actually have some of the like social, well, whatever, they were fun.
They were fine.
Some people had more fun than others, but it's necessary at a time when it was necessary. Yes. And like, there's plenty of people who I think still like love those kinds of things. It's like that's all great, but there's something about, again, that like energy of being there, being around the people. Live music has always been a social experience, and so that's one of the other cool things about what we're working on is like how, with this technology, if we do add it, how else does that kind of impact this social experience? Like, how does that impact how you interact with the crowd around you? And if you really think about your interaction space at a live music show, what does it consist of right now? There's like there's like a pretty simple tree of things to do, like dance by yourself, dance with someone,
smile at people.
You can smile at people.
Jokes,
you can't really talk to them.
People being
Sometimes
silly, doing
you can
fun
talk
things.
to them. Yeah. Sometimes in between the music, but often it's like kind of too loud. So it's like sometimes not the best conversation. Sometimes it's kind of annoying if someone's trying to talk to you. You're trying to like watch the music or whatever. There's the beach ball. That's fun when that starts getting going, right? That's always a fun interaction. There's like go get a beer. There's go to the bathroom. There's only so many.
Oh,
right?
you can take a lot of acid and look at the visuals.
There's that. Yes.
Or no acid, whatever you want.
If the visuals are good,
you don't need it.
You might not need it, but it might still be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, that's, There's anyway the the interactivity space and like kind of some of the social options. I don't want to get into it too much because like there's still there's I think there's a lot of fun stuff there that can be explored when you have this. And like I'm very curious to see how this how this evolves when the audience can start interacting more. And like I can picture, this was one of the ideas was like, let's say you're at like a Taylor Swift concert or something, and like this like huge thing rolls out from the stage, and it's like this like thing of like, white, like empty walls, right? And suddenly everybody has the ability to like paint them, right? Together. The entire audience can like paint this thing together. And I think that would be really compelling. And like compelling. Then the audience is being brought into the creative process, right? And it's this thing that could have only happened there. It only happened once, right? At the end of it, it's this thing that they painted together, and like it's kind of this thing that came out of that. It's taking this ephemeral moment, right, and like giving you something that
extra
you can kind of take home from it.
Amazing. Well, I really hope that continues and succeeds, and I think that I think that you and the company are at the right place at the right time. Maybe a little bit before your time.
The thing, the right time question. Because like I was saying, right, this is from 2019. Apple then released a VR headset pretty much, and Microsoft has since shut down their AR
department.
AI came along, and so now that's the only A acronym that people will be interested in investing in for a little bit.
That will die down.
But this is
it's reaching a bell curve.
Right. But it's something that I see as inevitable. I see this as like this is just based on what the trajectory I've seen in the last 10 years of stage designs. This is something 100%. People want. And what I would really like to do is do it before Facebook does it, because their version of this is gonna fucking suck.
Yeah.
And sure. Our version of it is going to be human. It's going to be, accentuating. Like, I honestly feel almost like it's like a mission, because I'm very scared. Like I love the live music experience. Like this is one of like the glowing parts of my experience as a human, and I don't want to see someone ham-fistedly like ram this technology into it. And that's kind of what I view the phones as, is totally. Like this is the opposite of what I think live music's about. Yeah. And if we can beat them to the punch and like make something really fun and really cool that is all about those feedback loops, the
performance, the idea of everybody together. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And that's
they're just going to want to have like a big Coca-Cola can coming down from the sky and spritzing
again. The where money collides with art, what do we do about that? There's no, you just have to be able to go to sleep at night, pretty much. Like, well, don't sell your soul.
It's a good segue to and my next question, or I guess next discussion, which I want to talk about, which is the economics of art and software engineering married with what it means to run a business and employ people. I think that you have a lot of experience also being an artist, but not necessarily what it means to, this is not like a knock on you, but what it means to be a successful artist. I don't know what that means either, but what it means to be a successful business owner that is employing people. And you're obviously not a corporate whore, a capitalist pig.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're clearly trying to build something bigger than its sum of its parts. But we need to be in the reality that we're inside of a capitalist society. We're inside of a economic forward-facing world, matrix, whatever you want to call it. what are some things that you've learned along the way? Maybe some advice for young entrepreneurs. I know it's a loaded question, but feel free to take it how you want.
It's a really good one. And I want to say I'm like the worst person in the world to answer it because like but I think everybody feels this. A lot of people do. Not everybody. Some people really understand money and understand kind of whatever.
They're called Jews, bro.
I'm not going there.
No comment. I could say that.
Yeah, right. No, it's like but maybe that also puts me in a good position because I've had to actually like grapple with a lot of that stuff, and like I think a good example or like a good way into this is maybe to look at like what I thought we were building over time. Mm-hmm. And, originally out of college, I was like, okay, we're smart people. We're gonna go do the tech startup thing. And like, we're gonna make a huge company. We're gonna get funding and we're gonna hire a bunch of people and like, it's gonna just look like we're gonna sell it for a bunch of money or actually no, it'll be like the cooler startup where like it does get huge, but you like keep control of it and like, keep doing cool things. And, there was this thing where like, there was this really hard moment actually that I talked about earlier of this pivoting between the musician market and the VJ market of like, our musician pitch was more like, oh yeah, we're after all of these millions of musicians that are all over the world and stuff. And like, yeah, there was a moment of like, well, wait, this is a much smaller market. Like, we're not going to be able to like, I don't know, like, can we really make this a pitch that like a VC would want to invest in or whatever? And just having to like lift that, it felt like such a weight was lifted when I woke up one day and I was like, wait a minute, we have a cool thing that people like and like we want to keep working on it and we could just make this a VJ software and like you don't have to be this like giant success like like a whatever Forbes like
top 100
child thing. There's just the success like what started as soon as I lifted that weight of like having that weird expectation. I don't even know where that came from, of like that's what we have to be doing, right? Because is like some obligation to, I don't know what it was, but
the American dream.
It was like it's like such a weight lifted and just being like, oh shit, we can just make a cool thing that people like. We can just make a product that people like, and that is enough to have a successful business.
But has an extremely powerful function in society, in our world.
Yeah, right.
Sorry to cut you off. I think that's really important to focus on.
Yeah, right. It's and then I think so. Like I don't know what the end goal is with Synesthesia, but it's I think it's I think it's got a long future ahead of it, and I feel so lucky for the fact that we've managed to find employees from like basically going out and using Synesthesia and having people approach me being like, oh wait, you're the developer of this? I know this and like I use it all the time. Actually, could you do this and this and this in it? Like, could you make these changes? Because like that would be really useful. And like I'm like, I could, but like I don't really have that much time.
Can you do it?
Do you know JavaScript? Like, do you know C++? Like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, cool. Let's do that for a little bit. And like every employee kind of happened in sort of an organic way like that. They joined on the team, like, kind of contracting, like fixing the things that they wanted to see in Synesthesia. And I was basically like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I don't, I had some ideas for Synesthesia and started this process, but like you guys clearly have others, and like I want to see what you can do with it, And that also allowed me then to like step away and be like, okay, AlphaChannel, what's going to be next, right? And start working on that. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but it's like I think it's not. I don't know. It's like I would call it it's like small business, and we like what we're working on, and yeah, I don't know.
I think maybe, and please, like chime in, but I think what's really of value here, and that's a good word, of value, is that money is not necessarily what is of value. That there is more value in making something that people can use and utilize. It makes the industry better. It makes people's lives better. And that is like a massive feedback loop of like, if I, as a performer, can perform better, my show is going to be better. All the people in the audience are going to have a better experience. Everybody that, that they tell about the show is going to have an interesting experience. The quote, the footage of the show is going to look better. Like, there's so many.
Well, I think that should be tied to the value, though. Like, that should be tied to the value people are getting paid for their art, right? Like, that is the value of the art, and it should that should kind of determine the price tag of it. And that's the part where like everybody disagrees a little bit on like what the value it's offering is and what the price tag should be on any given piece of art.
Totally.
Right?
I mean from a business perspective of like, is our value that we have X amount of money in our bank account, or is our value that we're providing an amazing product for people? And I don't know the answer. I've never made a product, but I feel like as the type of person that I want to be, when I provide services for people, obviously I much more rather make more money when I provide a service. That's like the goal, obviously. But the underlying thing is like, is the service that I'm providing making this person's life better? Is it making their client's life better? Is it feedbacking in a way?
No, I mean, this is a problem that I see with, and this was the other thing that like when I was stuck in that like we're a tech startup mindset, right? Before I was like, wait, it's cool to be a small business. This is awesome, right? Like that was the big shift. And when I was stuck in that tech startup mindset, I was looking at the things that other startups were doing,
right?
And what VCs kind of wanted you to do.
Yeah.
And it's like all of these dark patterns and things that are about
unethics.
Not a fair exchange of like, I made a thing that's valuable to you and you want to pay for it, right? Like the commerce that you're taught in Economics 101 or whatever, right? Like this is how society has grown and like blossomed, and it's like the beautiful part of capitalism, right? Fair exchange for goods made. It's like, about the kind of nasty side is like we're gonna get so much stinking money, make something that's like
garbage,
basically inextricable from these people's lives now, and kind of we're allowed to do that because we got all the VC investment, right? So like we were too big to be ignored, and then now that we're inextricable from their lives, we can kind of like dig in a little bit and start being like,
sell their data.
You're going to start paying us monthly, and we are going to start selling you data, and we're going to buy up all the competitors, so there's nothing else. And like all
whatever,
I mean, all of those things, like I think that is something that I've always strived for with Synesthesia, is like to walk that line of being a successful business. You don't want to sell for like dirt. You don't want to give your stuff away in the same way that like, it's you don't want to be taken advantage of as an artist.
You have to value yourself and your art and your work. I think that's like the get-go. I'm valuable. I have value to give. It's not like that doesn't necessarily equate to, okay, how can I maximize my profit? Right? Like I'm valuable and I'm worth something does not mean that like, okay, now I have to figure out the best way to make the most money. It's, if you really value yourself and you really value what you have to offer, then you're going to want to give it away in a way that doesn't necessarily maximize profits. You're going to want to give it in a way that matches your value, right?
Yeah.
If you have an amazing product, you can like look at like let's think about like Google and Facebook, right? Like they're obviously like their end goals were very evil, but their original idea of like here's something for free. Now, you know, their obviously goal of doing that was so that they can create more users and then use their data against them. Right. That's what you're talking about, like the dark path. But like the initial idea of like, we have something of very value. It's so valuable that here it is for free.
I mean, that's called a product, right? Like when you're and when you're making art and it's art that's deliverable in some way, right? Like to someone, that's also a product. And you want your product to be good. You don't want to have to be like this, you know, used car salesman, kind of, nothing against car salesmen, but like, you know, like the stereotype of they're selling you something that's really shitty, but they're so flashy about it, or they're tricking you in some way, right? And like I am a terrible salesperson in that way. But that's been beneficial to me because I think it's, and you know, I think for synesthesia as well, because I think it's like led to a thing of like, just make sure that the product itself is the value, that it is always correlated to the value that people are paying for it. Like stay focused on the end goal, which is not to sell the product, it's to build the product.
Yeah. Wow,
right. And if you build a good product, it'll sell itself.
That's it. That's the line. Like focus on making something that's good, not making something that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about this.
They could be. They could be. They could be the same. But if your focus is on the former, not the latter, you're actually going to provide people with something useful instead of like tricking them, like you said, into assuming that what you have is valuable.
Right. Yeah. No, but it's really hard to set. Yeah, to set price on things and stuff, and
how do you decide how much to charge for synesthesia? Like, what was the process of that?
Oh, I mean, we're still figuring it out, dude. Like, I don't know. Like, it's ongoing. It's it's like basically what you can kind of tell when you push it too high. And I think that's probably true in any product, right? Like, because I mean, you know, for me as a scientist, right, I have like kind of the lab background, and like that is like, oh, we'd have something I have no idea how to do, like set a price for something. Let's run some tests, right? Let's see what people will pay for it, right? And like you kind of, as long as you're just listening to people and what they say, and of course, you know, you'll get people on completely opposite sides of the same thing. So like we'll set a certain price and people will be like, wow, that's like way too high. There's like no way. And then other people are like, dude, what are you doing? Only charging like that? That's crazy. Like, are you kidding me? And then I literally got like, you know, 2 emails from 2 different people on the same day talking about the same price, like completely, you know, so flip side. And so it's, you know, but you can kind of tell when you're pushing it. But also, I guess I would just say, especially with art, like, don't be afraid to. It's hard for people. I don't know. For me, in valuing my art, it took a while for me to really wrap my head around what you were talking about. Of like, you need to value your own art. You need to, because like for you, I mean, and this gets into like imposter syndrome stuff, right? But like, totally. For an individual, you're like, well, I'm not really like doing anything that crazy. I'm just doing like this thing that guy did before, and this thing I saw online, and like, I don't know. I just kind of threw this together in like an hour, but yeah, like I don't know. There's this weird thing that happens in the art world where you start charging a little bit more and you start getting better clients, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's something a lot of people talk about, and 100%. It's true. It's very, very true. And you also want to ask yourself, how big of a client do you want? Because you don't want not ever, because that's again like, what's the goal here? Do you want to be stuck in doing like Facebook's tech, you know, like whatever, like do you want to be on their corporate committee, like designing their new like thumb or whatever? Or do you want to be, making something that's a little bit cooler than that and not having to call in on Zoom calls every day with that committee, right? So but if you are a struggling artist trying to make it, you could probably try raising your prices and then see what happens, and like see if you can convince someone of that price. If you can't, then you're going to learn a lot through that process of why you're a struggling artist, right? And it'll force you to like develop those techniques that unfortunately all artists who are trying to make a career out of their art and not just have their art alongside another career, which is also a totally valid thing to do, right? But that's it'll force you to confront things that maybe you should have already confronted, right? It'll like just give you this tool set that'll allow you to sell yourself better in the future.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's something that I always, I kind of have strayed away from it recently because I've just been less VJing, but the idea of
also, I could
VJs,
still hear you. Just
yeah, no worries. The idea of VJs pooling together and deciding on like a bottom end price, so that the market value retains its value, right? Like, just because you're starting, like and this is no judgment to starting VJs that don't charge for their work. Like we've both been in that position where we just want to perform and want to get experience. But there's a moment where you go from like a hobbyist or like I'm testing the waters to like I'm now a professional, and it's very important to retain that value because what we do is valuable. And it's, if a producer sees the point of a producer of a festival or a party, their goal is to maximize their event with its value, but retaining a lower budget, right? That's their goal. And it's not a bad thing. It's like what they're supposed to do so that they can offer a better experience to their patrons.
Right.
But if we don't create a bottom line value of what VJing is, then they're going to take advantage of that. Not necessarily in a negative way, just in like a natural way. And you can see this in almost all other performance industries, with dance, with DJing. The value of the skill is not lowered because there's more people doing it, but because the people that are willing to pay for it have realized that they can just offer you exposure or offer you XYZ that aren't money.
I think it's hard when I see calls like that from people, and I think back to my own career here and like how much I benefited from being able to say like, there's this event that we did for a while called Magic Mondays, and it was at this awesome venue in Austin, but it was like, it was a Monday night, it was like not a very crowded event, right? And so it was working for drink tickets, and like I look back and I'm like, was I devaluing the VJ, the value of VJs by doing that? At the same time, I didn't know anything about VJing. Like that's where I got started. That's where I learned things about like color and like how to fade out when the song ends properly and just like basic stuff like that, right? That I don't think I couldn't have gone in there and charged like $500 for that, right? So I guess like this is maybe a question for you, or like how do you do that? How do you kind of do that almost unionizing or whatever, right? Of like setting, we're going to set some basic price that makes sense. And at a certain level, definitely if like someone's doing work that's incredible and like they're way undercharging for it, like someone should tell them, right? Like, hey dude, like come on. But at the same time, it's not an easy industry to necessarily get started in, and like definitely not an easy one to make a full career in.
No,
I think difficult. One of the only reasons that I've been able to have a career in it is because I had this software on the side,
Yeah.
And like,
same for me. I had the ability to work in other industries while doing VJing, whether it was corporate theater, whether it's now, development of virtual production, things like that. But I'll tell you this, I mean, when I lived in Israel, and now in Israel whatever, Israel specifically is not the great topic, but now in Israel, there are a lot of VJs and they're making careers out of it because what we did was, before there was a lot of VJs and there was only like 5 or 6 of us, we had a group on WhatsApp and we talked about, hey, this producer's undercutting you. Hey, this producer wants to pay this. Hey, this guy's going to do this. Hey, I just got this really good deal on projectors. I'll rent it out to you. We'll share the profits. Let's rent it out for, let's not give it to them for cheaper. Let's keep it at the price that we got it for, but we're getting it. Like all these kind of little things that allowed and it retained its kind of trajectory now. Now there's starting to be some drama in the scene of like, you know, people, there's a lot of things happening now that are shifting, and I think the bubble will pop. But you have now between, I'd say, you know, easily 20 to 40 VJs, and Israel's a small country. There happens to be lots of parties and lots of events. It's a very kind of like thing, you know, now obviously with awards different, but in general, there's a lot of events, and people are charging, you know, from entry level, anywhere between $500 to $700 entry level to my mentor who's, you know, charging like $3,000 for an event. And people are willing to pay for it because if they're like, okay, this guy's charging too much, they go to the next guy. The next guy's like, no, this is the base price. Oh, that's too much. Okay, the next guy, oh no, this is the base price. And yes, there are still going to be people that have never performed before that want to get their legs. There's going to be people that are hobbyists that maybe performed 100 times, but they've never done it as a career. They've never taken it to the next level. And that's okay. There's always room for those people. But I think that, and to answer your question, I think that there is, you know, there's no easy answer. There's going to be people that want to perform no matter what. There's going to be people that are going to undercut the market no matter what. And I don't judge those people. I don't have any bad energy towards them. I just think that they're doing themselves a disservice because when they do get to a level that they're a professional, now the market value has lowered. And now they can't support themselves from it. And that's to say that like there is no easy response because did you working those Monday nights for drink tickets ruin the VJ market in Austin? Almost for sure not, right? But maybe you created a situation.
We kind of made the event happen almost, you know. Yeah.
Exactly. You might have created a situation now that a producer, like, I think it's all about communication. Like if you go to a producer and say, hey, I am not a VJ. I am trying to figure this shit out. Do you want to use me? Like if you come to be like, I'm a VJ and I charge a little bit of money, like that is not good for the system. But if you come to it like, I'm starting out, I'm charging a little bit of money, then you're kind of telling the producers you can get a better product, right? If you pay more money. And I think that that's important. You know, I don't know what's going to be in the future really, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's also about kind of making yourself like indispensable, right? Like you're talking about thinking from their perspective of like, what is it that they're paying for and how you pitch yourself. And, you know, those are like, these are extra things. Like I am, for the record, I am in favor of this idea of like setting some price. And basically, I think what you actually touched on it perfectly. It's about educating the newcomers, right? That telling them that actually
your value,
hey, this is what they will pay you if you just ask for it, right? They that's what they want to hear. So like, just making sure that those communication channels are open, which I think is one of the coolest things about this industry, is that there's so much like
sharing of information.
So much sharing of knowledge and you know, even between the softwares, like you can string all the softwares together. It's just awesome. But
that
it's all about that communication.
It's all about the communication.
And,
I wanted to touch on that because it kind of is a segue to another thing is you know, community oriented software. You know, my favorite thing about Touch Designer, besides for it being the best software ever created, no offense to Synesthesia, is that
I love it. I fucking love Touch Designer.
The community of Touch Designer is so amazing. And like, you know, they've gone through a lot of iterations from different pricing, from, you know, they never had a corporate buyout, thank God, and they've always retained their kind of like, you know, quality in their company. But they've had a lot of changes if it comes to support and all these things. But what didn't change is the community. And you can see this from, if you go to the Touch Designer Help the community on Facebook, you can search for a question that was answered by, what's his name? I can't remember. He has a really funny voice, very high-pitched voice.
I can't remember either.
He's like the OG tutorial, but my point is that like you can go and watch his tutorial from 10 years ago, and like, you know, and then now you have like these amazing channels on YouTube, and now you have all these amazing Patreons, and it's like this beautiful trajectory of like quality, high value content for free. You know, and even with the advent of Patreon, and even with the advent of like, you know, people charging for these tutorials,
right?
Like even the Immersive HQ, right? They have a system where you can go and sign up and be part of their school, but they also offer tons of things for free online and tons of information for free online. And I think that that's like a really valuable thing that exists in the touch designer community, which doesn't exist in like the Unreal community, for instance. The Blender community has this, you know.
That's the I mean, that's the cool part about the VJ sphere as a, like, you know, as a community, as a market, as a, like, you know, global artist collective, whatever. Like, there's like, it's kind of small enough. It's people don't even know about us, right? Like, how many times as a VJ have you had the experience of what do I do? Yeah, like being like, what do you do? So okay, here we go.
You know the concert when there's screens?
You know, like, music festivals where there's like an LED wall sometimes, or like an LED wall. You don't know that term? Yeah, like, you know, or sometimes I'll be like, you know, out in the little booth where the sound guy sets up. Yeah, well, next to them there's a guy doing the visuals, like, or girl these days, which is freaking awesome. Yeah, and it's like this thing where no one even knows that we exist. It's a niche, right? And that's what's really cool about this moment. VJing has blown up in a big way. Like, there's a lot of, I mean, just look at the number of softwares out here now, and like, people are kind of starting to understand that this is this art form that's been simmering, and, you know, people who've been doing it for 30 years will be like, yeah, no, it's like, it's not blowing up now. It like blew up way back then or whatever, but it's continuing to blow up, right? And but it's still niche. Like, we kind of, you know, if you go to a couple festivals and just walk up to front of house and start talking to people, the
people know each other.
I think the visual people are pretty likely to just engage you in conversation and be like, oh yeah, what do you use? Sure. Like, right? It's a small community. People are friendly. They want to talk to you about what they do, because there's not that much recognition all the time, right? So it's nice to be 100%. Recognized for what you're doing as well. And like,
100%.
Yeah, I kind of forgot how we got into that, but I think it's that's one of the cool things about it. And then as a market, you know, or like for Synesthesia, that's one of the cool things about it too, is that it's a
emerging
Synesthesia
market?
just spread through word of mouth. You know, it's just people telling other VJs telling other people. Like, I posted, you know, a couple times on VJ Union Global, and like, that was the extent of the advertising for it, pretty much, for like, you know, a long time, right? For like years. And like, yeah, it's sorry, one sec. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's like, that's one of the cool things, right? It's this community. We like prop each other up, and keeping that communication open on you know, how we price ourselves too. It's important.
Yeah. I think it's important. Yeah. So I think we're kind of.
I guess I also want to say there's a like, shout out to the Synesthesia Discord, which Kyle Grover's put a lot of work into cultivating. But yeah, like, that's like, you can just go on there and like ask your questions about Synesthesia and get them answered by either devs or other users, which is just awesome. There was actually someone, like, there was this really funny thing that happened when we were developing Windows, and which took a long time. It took so long to port to Windows. It was a complete pain in the ass. But we we made the website, like, download page live for Windows for a sec, like, just testing it out. And one of our users, like, went over to the user group and posted, like, you guys, it's live. And I was like, what? Like, how did that happen? Like, that was only up for like an hour. Like, you visited during that hour, you downloaded it, you tested it, and then you went over and posted it in the user group, and now everyone's asking where it is because we took it back down because we were just testing the website. And
it's
just cool to it's really cool to be getting that feedback from the community.
I think this is a good place to stop. We've been going a long time.
Yeah.
This has been a really awesome conversation, Theron.
It has been. I would love to talk to you again for 3 hours. You know,
we will. I want to just tell people to please check out Synesthesia. There's a free version, so there's no reason not to. And anything else you want to say?
www.synesthesia.live.
Good luck spelling it.
That's the URL. We're pronouncing it. Yep. That's something to consider. Hey, all you other potential entrepreneurs, app developers, think about how hard your name is to spell and pronounce when you're picking an app name.
That's really great.
Speaking from experience there. But anyway, Synesthesia, there's a free demo. If you want to learn how it works, there's a bunch of tutorials on YouTube. Yeah. Or you can check out the Discord. I'm in the Discord. The rest of the devs are in the Discord. We're happy to show you the ropes.
Wow, what an episode. Thank you, Theron, for taking the time to sit with us and showcase your amazing software. Really much appreciated. Thank you, Mana Smash, for the awesome music. Join us next week. We'll have Time 64 AA. See you next week.